The time is 3:17 in the morning. The house is perfectly still, a deep, quiet black that only happens in the hours before dawn. But inside your head, it is loud. It is brilliantly, chaotically loud. A reel of conversations from yesterday plays back, edited with all the things you should have said. A to-do list for tomorrow unfurls, each item glowing with a sense of urgent, impossible importance. There are worries, old and new, that circle like vultures, patiently waiting for a moment of stillness to descend. This isn't just a sleepless night, it is a symptom of a modern condition, a kind of disease of fullness. Our minds have become like a house, filled to the rafters with furniture we never use, boxes we never unpack, and noise from a television that is always on. We have spent our lives accumulating degrees, promotions, possessions, followers, experiences. We have been told that a full life is a good life, so we have filled every corner of our awareness, every moment of our time. And yet, in the dead of night, when all the distractions fall away, we feel a profound and aching emptiness. The anxiety, the stress, the pressure that keeps your eyes open right now is the sound of your own mind crying out for space. It is the cry of a spirit, suffocating under the weight of everything it has been forced to hold. What if the solution to this sleeplessness, to this anxiety, was not to add one more thing? Not a new technique, not another positive affirmation to cram into the crowded space. What if the solution was profoundly simple and beautifully paradoxical? What if it was about taking away? What if the path to true, deep, restorative rest and the inner peace you crave lies not in filling the void, but in embracing it? This is a journey into the heart of a powerful ancient idea, the idea of emptiness, not the emptiness of loss or lack, but the emptiness of an open sky, vast and blue and capable of holding every cloud without being disturbed. The emptiness of a resonant bell, whose beautiful sound is only possible because of the space within. It is a journey to discover that the freedom you are searching for is not found by solving every problem your mind presents, but by realizing the silent, spacious awareness in which all those problems appear and disappear. The path to a quiet mind and a truly peaceful sleep begins with learning how to gently, intentionally become empty. We have felt the silence of that room at 3 in the morning and the deafening noise within our own head. We have named the symptom, this feeling of being overwhelmed, this anxious insomnia. Now, we must go deeper. We must diagnose the illness itself. To do this, we must be willing to look at the very structure of our daily lives and the minds that navigate them. The feeling of being trapped, which so many of us experience, is not an illusion. We are, in a very real sense, living within a prison. But this prison is unique. It has no bars of iron, no walls of stone. It is an invisible prison, constructed entirely within the mind, and its walls are built from the habits, beliefs, and pressures that we have come to accept as normal. To find freedom, we must first become aware of the walls that confine us. The first wall of this prison is the modern cult of busyness. At some point in our recent history, we began to confuse activity with meaning. We have built a culture that worships at the altar of productivity. Consider the common exchange, the simple greeting of, "How are you?" The answer so often is not, "I am well," or "I am content." The answer, delivered with a strange mix of exhaustion and pride, is, "I am busy," or "Things are crazy right now." We wear our busyness as a badge of honor, a testament to our importance, our relevance, our worth. To be busy is to be needed. To have a full calendar is to have a full life. And so, we fear stillness. We fear the empty spaces in our schedule. An unscheduled hour can feel like a personal failure, a moment of squandered potential. We have become so conditioned to equate our value with our output that when the output stops, we feel a flicker of panic. Who am I if I am not producing, achieving, or moving forward? This fear drives us to fill every moment. Our commute is filled with podcasts about self-improvement. Our lunch breaks are for catching up on emails. Even our leisure is optimized, our hobbies turned into side hustles, our rest quantified by sleep tracking apps that tell us how efficiently we are recovering, so we can be ready to be productive again tomorrow. This relentless momentum is the first wall. It creates a baseline of tension, a low-grade hum of frantic energy that we carry in our muscles and our nerves, a hum that does not simply switch off when our head hits the pillow. The second wall Interlocking perfectly with the first is the profound illusion of control. The human mind is a magnificent planning tool. It evolved to anticipate threats, to find patterns, and to create strategies for survival. But in our modern world, this incredible tool has been turned against itself. With most of our basic survival needs met, the mind now seeks to control a far more unpredictable environment, the future. We spend countless hours living in a world that does not exist. We run complex simulations of upcoming meetings, playing out every possible conversational path. We construct elaborate contingency plans for holidays, relationships, and career moves, trying to account for every variable to mitigate every possible risk. We lie in bed and mentally edit yesterday's conversations, as if a better performance in our imagination could somehow change the past. This constant effort to manage, to predict, and to perfect the flow of life is utterly exhausting. It is a full-time job with no salary and no vacation days. It is an attempt to nail down the wind and to chart the clouds. Life is, by its very nature, uncertain. It is a dance of chaos and order, of surprise and routine. By trying to force it into a rigid, predictable script, we are fighting against its fundamental nature. This fight creates a chronic state of resistance, a subtle but persistent tightening against the world. It's a clenching in the jaw, a tension in the shoulders, a knot in the stomach. It is the physical residue of a mind that will not, cannot, let go. This desperate need to be the master of our own destiny, to control every outcome, is the second wall of our prison, and it is thick with the mortar of anxiety. The third wall is the fragmentation of our attention. If the cult of busyness provides the frantic energy, and the illusion of control provides the anxiety, then our fractured attention is what shatters our peace into 1,000 tiny pieces. Our ancestors might have focused on a single task for hours, hunting, weaving, or crafting a tool. Their attention was a deep, flowing river. Our attention, today, is more like a shattered mirror. We read an article on our laptop while a video plays in a small window in the corner. Our phone buzzes with notifications from 3 different social media apps. We listen to a podcast while scrolling through headlines, our mind half present in both and fully present in neither. Each ping, each buzz, each new notification is a small pebble thrown into the pond of our consciousness, ensuring the surface is never still for long. Technology has trained our brains to crave novelty, to seek the next little hit of dopamine that comes from a new email, a new like, a new piece of information. We are becoming masters of the shallow dive, jumping from one thing to the next, and losing the capacity for the deep, immersive focus where true understanding and tranquility are found. This fragmentation is not just an external problem, it becomes an internal habit. Even in a quiet room, with no devices in sight, the mind continues to jump. From a worry about work, to a memory from childhood, to a fantasy about the future, to a lyric from a song, it cannot settle. It does not know how. And if we can never gather our attention, if we can never be fully present in one place, at one time, we can never truly find peace. For peace exists only in the unbroken stillness of the present moment. This scattered, restless mind is the third wall, and it ensures we are always everywhere and nowhere at once. And who is it that perpetuates this? Who is the guard that patrols the corridors of this prison, ensuring its walls remain strong? This brings us to the fourth wall, the ceaseless voice of the judging self. It is the inner narrator, the ego, the I, that feels it must be busy, that believes it must be in control, and whose attention is so easily scattered. This voice is the constant companion to our lives. It is the inner critic that judges our performance, our appearance, our words. It is the great comparer that scrolls through the curated lives of others and finds our own to be lacking. It is the worrier that takes the raw data of life and weaves it into terrifying stories of future catastrophe. This internal monologue is the source of the noise. It is a toxic, self-sustaining feedback loop. A thought of inadequacy arises. The judging self seizes upon it, adding criticism. This criticism creates a feeling of anxiety. The anxious feeling then fuels more worried thoughts. On and on it goes, a machine that runs on its own exhaust fumes. This voice is what we hear in the 3 a.m. darkness. It is the relentless prosecutor, judge, and jury of our own private courtroom. It is the final wall of the prison, the one that convinces us that we belong here, that this state of quiet desperation is simply who we are. Imagine a master painter, known across the land for creating artworks of breathtaking serenity. He is invited to a grand hall to paint his masterpiece. He is given his brushes, his palette of tranquil blues and gentle golds, and he is led to the canvas. But the canvas is not blank. It is a chaotic mess. It is covered in layers of old, cracking paint. There are frantic, angry scribbles in black charcoal. There are splashes of mud and wine stains. Someone has tried to paint a dozen different pictures here before, all on top of each other. The master painter stands back, his brushes hanging limp in his hand. What can he do? If he paints a stroke of serene blue, it is immediately swallowed by the surrounding chaos. If he tries to sketch a peaceful landscape, its lines are lost in the angry scribbles beneath. He cannot add peace on top of this mess. He cannot paint his masterpiece on a canvas that is already so violently, so completely full. We are that painter. Our mind is that canvas. We try to add a layer of peace, perhaps through a short vacation, a new hobby, or a glass of wine at the end of the day. But we are painting onto a surface that is already overloaded with the frantic energy of busyness, the anxious scribbles of control, the fragmented chaos of a shattered attention, and the dark stains of self-judgment. The peace cannot last. It is quickly swallowed by the background noise. The problem is not our inability to paint. The problem is the canvas itself. And so, we see the shape of our invisible prison. Its walls are the glorification of busyness, the desperate need for control, a fractured and scattered attention, and the constant, judging voice of the self. The parable of the painter shows us the futility of our usual approach. We cannot simply add more. We cannot force peace onto chaos. We must first understand the nature of the chaos itself. We must understand the canvas, and to do that, we must ask the most fundamental question of all. Who is this prisoner? Who is this painter, standing so helplessly before his task? To truly understand the prison, we must now turn our gaze inward and meet the prisoner. We must look closely and with great compassion at the very idea of the self that feels so hopelessly trapped. We have stood before the walls of our invisible prison. We have felt their suffocating presence in our frantic busyness, our desperate need for control, our scattered attention, and the relentless hum of our inner critic. We have seen that we are like a master painter, unable to create peace on a canvas already consumed by chaos. And we were left with a question, the most intimate question of all. Who is the prisoner? Who is this I that feels so trapped? To begin our journey towards liberation, we must turn our gaze away from the prison walls and look directly at the inhabitant. We must dare to investigate the very nature of the self. What is this self? When you say, I am tired, or I want this, or I am afraid, who exactly is this I? Our immediate assumption is that it is a solid, continuous entity, a core being, a soul, a personality that was born with us and will carry on throughout our lives. Like a driver inside the vehicle of the body, we feel like a singular, unified thing, but Buddhist wisdom asks us to pause and to look closer. It suggests that this feeling of a solid self is a powerful illusion, and that our attachment to this illusion is the primary source of our suffering. The self is not a thing to be found, but a story to be understood. Let's begin where its story begins. We are not born with a sense of self. A newborn baby exists in a state of pure, undifferentiated being. There is no me and not me. There is only sensation, warmth, hunger, sound, light. Then, the construction project begins. We are given a name, the first and most powerful label. This name becomes the central file folder into which everything else will be placed. We are told, you are a good boy, or you are a shy girl. These are the first bricks of identity. Our parents, with the best of intentions, reflect an image back at us, and we begin to mistake that reflection for our true face. The construction continues at school. We are defined by our grades, our aptitude for sports, our popularity within a social group. We learn to identify as smart, artistic, athletic, or awkward. Each label adds another layer to the growing structure. Then comes the world of work, which provides some of our most rigid and cherished identities. I am a doctor. I am a teacher. I am an executive. These titles come with entire scripts of expected behavior, beliefs, and even ways of dressing. Our culture adds more layers. Our nationality, our political affiliations, our consumer preferences. The self becomes a vast and intricate collage, assembled from pieces of external validation, social conditioning, and accumulated memory. It is not a core essence we are born with. It is a persona, a mask, that has been painstakingly and often unconsciously assembled throughout our entire lives. This assembled structure, this collage of identity, is not static. It has a powerful, active function. Its primary job is to be a storyteller. The self, or the ego, is the relentless narrator of our lives. It takes all these disparate pieces: our name, our memories, our titles, our fear sand. It weaves them into a continuous and seemingly coherent story titled Me. This story has a protagonist, the hero of the tale, which is always I. It has a backstory, a carefully edited version of our past that often emphasizes our wounds or our triumphs to justify our present state. And it has a driving plot, a constant forward momentum towards a desired future, a future where the protagonist finally gets what they want and vanquishes all their enemies. This internal narrative dictates almost everything we do. When we say, "I'm not the kind of person who does that," what we are really saying is, that action does not fit into the current script of the story I'm telling myself about who I am. The story provides a sense of consistency and security. It gives us a map to navigate the world. But it is also profoundly limiting. We become typecast in our own movie, playing a role we may have written for ourselves as a scared child or an ambitious teenager, and we forget that we are the authors, not just the actors. We forget we have the power to edit the script at any moment. And what happens when the world doesn't follow our script? What happens when reality contradicts our carefully crafted story? This reveals the profound fragility of the self. If your story is, "I'm a competent and respected professional," and your boss criticizes your work, the pain you feel is not just about the feedback. It is a structural threat to the entire narrative of your identity. The story itself is under attack, and the ego panics because it senses its own potential non-existence. This is why failure can be so devastating. It's not just a missed goal. It's a plot twist that threatens to invalidate the whole story of me as a successful person. To protect this fragile story, the ego builds a fortress of defense mechanisms. It blames others. It makes excuses. It rationalizes its mistakes. It avoids new challenges where failure is a possibility. This constant defensive action, this propping up of a fragile narrative, is the source of immense inner friction and anxiety. The tension we feel is the energy it takes to hold our story together against the unpredictable tide of reality. Given this, it might seem like the goal is to destroy the self, to annihilate the ego. This is a common and dangerous misunderstanding of the path. The ego, the functional self, is not the enemy. It is a necessary tool. You need a functional self to remember your address, to make a doctor's appointment, to form loving relationships, to navigate the complex social world. The problem is not the ego's existence. The problem is our total and unquestioning identification with it. We believe that we are the story. We believe that we are the mask. The spiritual journey is not about killing the ego, but about developing the wisdom to see it for what it is. A temporary, conditioned, and incredibly useful tool, but not the totality of who we are. The goal is to shift your perspective, to go from being the character completely lost in the drama of the play, to being the wise, compassionate audience member who is watching the play unfold. When you can observe your own ego, when you can see its posturing, its fear, its pride, its storytelling, you are no longer possessed by it. A space opens up between the self and your awareness of the self. In that space lies freedom. Imagine you are holding an onion. You want to find the true essence of the onion, the real core onionness. So you begin to peel it. The first layer is the dry, papery skin. You peel it away. Is that the onion? No, it's just the outer covering. You peel away the first thick, white layer. This is your name, your job title. Is that you? No, that can change. You peel away the next layer. This is your role as a parent, a child, a friend. Deeply important, but is it the core of your being? No, these are relationships. You keep peeling. You peel away the layer of your political beliefs, the layer of your accomplishments, the layer of your deepest shames and regrets. You peel away the layer of your physical body, which is constantly changing. With each layer removed, you expect to get closer to the center, to the solid core that you are sure must be in there. You peel, and the layers get smaller and smaller. And then you peel away the final, tiny sliver of the heart of the onion, and your hands are empty. There is nothing left. The startling, profound realization is that there was never a core. The onion was the layers. Its entire being was the sum of its interconnected, interdependent parts. This is the self we have been protecting so fiercely. It is an onion. It is a collection of layers, a construct of roles, memories, beliefs, and sensations. The word I is a convenient label for this bundle, but there is no solid, separate, unchanging entity at the center of it all. The prisoner in the cell, the painter before the canvas, is a story, a beautiful, complex, and often painful story. The suffering we feel, the walls of the prison that confine us, arise from one simple, tragic mistake. We are desperately clinging to the layers of the onion, terrified that if we let them go, there will be nothing left. We believe we are the mask, and we live in constant fear that it will crack. This understanding is the first key to unlocking the cell door. The story of the self feels so solid, so permanent, but the onion shows us that it is nothing but a temporary collection of ever-changing layers. This realization that the very foundation of who we think we are is in a constant state of flux brings us face to face with one of the most powerful and liberating truths of existence. It leads us directly to the great, flowing river of impermanence. We have peeled back the layers of the self, like an onion, searching for a solid core, only to find our hands empty. We are left holding not a thing, but a process, a collection of stories, memories, and sensations. This discovery, while perhaps unsettling at first, is the gateway to a profound truth. If the self is a collection of parts, what is the nature of these parts? What is the nature of the thoughts, the feelings, the body, and the world they inhabit? The answer is found in one of the most fundamental teachings of the Buddha, a concept as universal and as undeniable as gravity. It is the truth of anicca. In the Pali language, this means impermanence. It is the simple, radical, and observable reality that everything changes. Everything. This is not a pessimistic philosophy, but a clear-eyed observation of the universe. Look outward. The great mountains that seem so solid and eternal are slowly being worn down by wind and rain. The stars that glitter in the night sky are all in a process of being born, burning, and eventually dying over eons. Civilizations rise, build great monuments, and then crumble into dust, leaving only whispers for archaeologists to find. The seasons turn, one into the next, in a ceaseless dance of birth, growth, decay, and renewal. Nothing holds. Now, bring that lens closer to your own life. The city you live in is not the same as it was 10 years ago. The cafe on the corner where you once met a friend is now a laundromat. The friendships that you thought would last a lifetime have, some of them, drifted away like clouds, while new, unexpected connections have formed. The very cells in your body are in a constant state of flux. Scientists say that in roughly 7 years, nearly every cell has been replaced. You are, quite literally, not the same physical person you were a decade ago. And most importantly, look within. Where's the thought you had just a moment ago? It arose, it lingered for a second, and it vanished. Where is the feeling of joy you felt last week? It was real, it was powerful, and it has passed. Where is the anger that consumed you yesterday? It too has subsided. Our inner world is a relentless parade of changing phenomena. Thoughts, emotions, moods, sensations, urges they appear in our consciousness, stay for a while, and then dissolve, making way for the next event. They are like weather patterns. Sometimes it is sunny, sometimes it is stormy, sometimes it is calm, sometimes it is turbulent. But the weather is never permanent. It is always, always moving. Anicca is not a theory to be believed. It is a reality to be noticed. The entire universe, from the grandest galaxy to the most fleeting thought, is a single, vast, flowing river. Everything is in process. Nothing is a fixed entity. Everything is on its way to becoming something else. If this universal law is so obvious, why does it cause us so much trouble? The problem is not impermanence itself. The river is not the problem. The suffering comes from our desperate attempt to build a permanent house on the bank of the ever-flowing river. We resist the current. This resistance is the very source of what the Buddha called dukkha, a word often translated as suffering, but which is better understood as a deep, pervasive unsatisfactoriness. We experience a moment of profound happiness, perhaps falling in love, or achieving a long-sought goal. It is a beautiful, warm, sunlit moment, but almost immediately, a second, subtle thought arises, a shadow behind the light. I hope this lasts forever. And in that moment, clinging is born. We grasp at the pleasant feeling. We try to possess it, to freeze it in time. By doing so, we introduce a new anxiety, the fear of its inevitable end. We are no longer fully enjoying the sunshine. We are already worrying about the sunset. The same is true for painful experiences. When we feel sadness or physical pain or rejection, our immediate reaction is aversion. I have to get rid of this feeling. I can't stand it. We push it away. We try to numb it. We distract ourselves. This resistance creates a second layer of suffering on top of the original pain. It's like being shot with an arrow. The first arrow is the pain itself, which is unavoidable in life. But the second arrow, which is optional, is our reaction to the pain or story about it, our resistance, our panic. Most of our suffering comes from this second arrow, which we shoot into ourselves. Our endless anxiety about the future is a form of resisting impermanence. We are trying to control what has not yet happened. Our deep-seated regrets about the past are another form. We are trying to change what has already flowed down the river. This constant struggle, this fight against the fundamental nature of reality, is why we are so tired. We are engaged in a battle we can never, ever win. But there is another side to this truth. When we stop resisting and look deeply into the nature of impermanence, we discover a hidden and profound beauty. Anicca is not a curse, it is a blessing. Without impermanence, there could be no growth. A tiny seed would remain a seed forever, never becoming a great tree. A child would never mature into an adult. We would be frozen in our ignorance, incapable of learning, changing, or becoming wiser. Without impermanence, there could be no healing. A cut on your hand would never close. The sharp pain of grief would remain at its peak intensity for the rest of time. A mistake you made would define you forever, with no possibility of making amends, learning from it, or being forgiven. The very possibility of healing, of renewal, of starting again, is a gift from the river of change. Every sunrise is a new beginning. Every moment is a chance to let go of the last. The beauty of a blossom, the magic of a piece of music, the warmth of a new friendship, all of these are precious, precisely because they are fleeting. Impermanence is what makes life precious. It invites us not to possess, but to appreciate, not to cling, but to cherish. This may still seem abstract, but there is a way to experience this truth directly, right now, wherever you are. It is your own breath. Your breath is your personal, portable teacher of Anicca. If you can, bring your attention gently to the sensation of your breathing. Notice the air flowing in through your nostrils. It arises from nothing. It fills your lungs. There is a brief pause, and then it flows out again, dissolving back into nothing. You cannot hold on to the in-breath. Try it. It immediately becomes uncomfortable, a form of suffering. You must let it go to make space for the next breath, and you cannot stop the out-breath. You must release it. This simple, rhythmic cycle of arising and passing away is happening within you 20,000 times a day. It is a perfect, silent sermon on the nature of reality. Each breath is born, it lives its short life, and it dies. And from that death, the next breath is born. By simply resting your awareness on this process, you are training your mind in a very gentle way to become comfortable with the flow of change. With every exhalation, you are practicing the art of letting go. There is a timeless story of a great king who had everything he could ever desire, but his heart was restless. He would swing from moments of ecstatic joy to pits of deep despair. He summoned the wise people of his kingdom and gave them a challenge. "Create for me a ring," he said, "that has the power to make me happy when I am sad, but it must also have the power to make me sad when I am too happy." The wise ones were perplexed, but a humble old goldsmith came forward a few days later. He presented the king with a simple gold band. The king looked at it and saw a tiny inscription on the inside. He read the words, and his eyes filled with tears of understanding. The inscription read, "This too shall pass." In his moments of deepest sorrow, the king would look at the ring, and it would remind him that his pain was not permanent, that the clouds would eventually part. It gave him hope, and in his moments of greatest victory and elation, he would look at the ring, and it would remind him not to become arrogant, not to cling to his glory, for that too was just a passing wave on the great ocean of time. The ring held the ultimate wisdom. We have now walked along the banks of this great river of impermanence. We have seen that everything around us and everything within us is part of its ceaseless flow. Our thoughts, our feelings, our identities, our very bodies, They are all temporary phenomena, arising and passing away. And this brings us to a crucial and unavoidable question. If everything is in flux, if all the layers of the onion are constantly changing, what does that say about the one who seems to be experiencing it all? What about the storyteller, the protagonist of our inner movie? If the house itself is constantly shifting and changing, can there really be a permanent, solid resident living inside? This very question begins to dissolve the final and most powerful illusion of all the illusion of a separate, solid self. It carries us directly from the truth of impermanence into the heart of an even more profound reality, the truth of no self. We have journeyed together along the riverbank of Anicca, the great truth of impermanence. We have watched as everything we once thought was solid, our thoughts, our emotions, our bodies, the world itself revealed itself to be part of a ceaseless, flowing process of change. This leads us to the most intimate and challenging investigation of all. If everything is a flowing river, then who or what is the swimmer? Who is this I that seems to be at the center of this experience? If the river is constantly changing, can the swimmer be a solid, unchanging rock in the middle of the current? The wisdom of the Buddha invites us to look very, very closely, and it offers an answer that is perhaps the most radical, misunderstood, and ultimately liberating teaching in human history. This is the truth of anatta, or no self. Instinctively, we feel that there is a me inside, a chief executive in the control room of the brain, a ghost in the machine, a singular, continuous being who is authoring our thoughts and feeling our emotions. This feeling is powerful, and it has been the bedrock of our identity since we were children. The teaching of anatta asks us not to deny this feeling, but to investigate it with gentle, courageous curiosity. It asks, can you find this self? If you look for it, where is it? Is it in your head, behind your eyes? Is it in your heart, where you feel emotion? Is it the voice that narrates your day? But if it's the voice, then who is it that hears the voice? The more you search for a solid, independent, unchanging self, the more it slips through your fingers. You can't locate it as a distinct entity. This is our first clue. The self we're looking for may not be a thing at all. It may be something else entirely. To help us understand, Buddhist thought offers a brilliant and practical model. It suggests that what we call a self is not a single entity, but a dynamic, interacting process made up of 5 distinct streams or aggregates. Imagine these not as solid building blocks, but as 5 flowing currents that come together to create the temporary eddy that we label me. The first current is form. This is our physical bodger, flesh, bones, blood, and breath. This is the most obvious candidate for the self, and yet, as we have seen, it is a perfect example of impermanence. It is constantly changing, aging, healing, decaying. If you lose a limb, are you any less you? If you receive an organ transplant, have you become someone else? We realize that the body is something we have, not something we fundamentally are. The second current is sensation, or feeling. This is the raw data that streams in through our senses, which our mind immediately codes as pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. The warmth of the sun on your skin is a pleasant sensation. The sound of a siren is an unpleasant one. The feeling of your clothes against your body might be neutral. Are you these sensations? Are you your pleasure? Are you your pain? Of course not. They are fleeting visitors. They come and they go. They are part of our experience, but they are not our essence. The third current is perception. This is the faculty of the mind that recognizes, identifies, and labels. It takes the raw data of sensation and gives it a name. It sees a collection of green and brown and says, tree. It hears a critical tone of voice and labels it insult. It feels a pleasant sensation and thinks, this is happiness. Perception is like a busy librarian, stamping every experience with a concept. Is this you? No, these perceptions are learned. They are conditioned by our culture and our past. They can be, and often are, mistaken. The fourth current is the most complex and powerful. It is called mental formations. This is a vast category that includes all of our active mental habits. Our thoughts, our beliefs, our opinions, our moods, our intentions, our desires, our prejudices, our dreams, our fears. The inner storyteller we met earlier, the ego that weaves a narrative about me, lives and breathes in this stream. This is where most of us locate our identity. I am my thoughts, but are you? Thoughts arise unbidden and then disappear. You can have a hateful thought one moment and a loving thought the next. Are you both? Your opinions change over time. Your moods are as fickle as the weather. This stream is a chaotic, churning river of mental activity. It is a process, not a permanent entity. The fifth and final current is consciousness. This is the basic quality of awareness or knowing. It is the light that allows the other four streams to be known. There is seeing consciousness, which knows sights. There is hearing consciousness, which knows sounds. There is thinking consciousness, which knows thoughts. But this consciousness is not a constant, monolithic thing. It is not a blank screen on which the movie of life plays. It arises only in dependence on an object. There can be no seeing without something to be seen. There can be no hearing without a sound to be heard. It flickers into existence, moment by moment, always connected, always in relationship. It is not a standalone soul. So, where is the self? It is not in any one of these five streams, and it is not something separate from them either. The profound conclusion is this: what we call self is simply the temporary coming together of these five flowing, interdependent processes. There is no owner of the house. The house itself is just a temporary pattern of activity. The Buddha used the analogy of a wave on the ocean. You can see a wave, you can name it, you can describe its height and its power. But is the wave separate from the ocean? Number, it is a temporary expression of the ocean. It is water, in motion. In the same way, you are not a separate entity. You are a temporary expression of the universe. You are life, in process. This insight can be brought into your daily life through a simple shift in perspective. The next time a powerful thought or emotion arises like, "I am so anxious," try a small experiment. Instead of grabbing onto it and identifying with it, just notice it. You can rephrase it in your mind. A feeling of anxiety is present, or a thought about anxiety has arisen. Can you feel the difference? That subtle shift creates a space. It depersonalizes the event. The anxiety is no longer me. It is simply an event happening in me, a cloud passing through the vast sky of my awareness. In that space, you have a choice. You don't have to be swept away by it. This can sound frightening. If there is no me, am I being annihilated? But the liberation of anatta is not annihilation. It is the end of an exhausting and impossible job, the job of self-defense. Think of how much energy you expend every single day protecting your idea of yourself. You defend your opinions in an argument. You worry about your reputation. You feel the sting of criticism. You puff up with pride at a compliment. You are constantly polishing and defending a fragile statue of me. When you see, truly see, that there is no fixed, solid statue to defend, the need for all that effort falls away. A great weight is lifted from your shoulders. Criticism is just another person's thought stream intersecting with yours. Failure is just an event, not a verdict on your core being. You can finally relax. You can be more open, more curious, more playful, and far less afraid. Compassion also arises effortlessly. When you look at someone who is angry or cruel, you no longer see a solid, evil person. You see a collection of the five processes, tangled in suffering, driven by their own painful mental formations. You see a reflection of yourself, and your heart naturally softens. The most famous illustration of this teaching is the story of the Buddhist sage Nagasena and the Greek king Melinda. The king, a sharp debater, sought to challenge Nagasena on the teaching of no self. He asked, "Reverend Sir, what is your name?" Nagasena replied that he was known as Nagasena, but that this was just a convenient designation, as there was no permanent person to be found. The king scoffed and used Nagasena's own logic against him, pointing to the magnificent chariot he arrived in. If there is no person, then who owns this chariot? What is a chariot? Is it the wheels, the axle, the reins? To each question, Nagasena calmly replied, "No, Your Majesty." The king was delighted, believing he had trapped the monk. "Then your words are empty. There is no chariot." But Nagasena then turned the tables. He said, "Your Majesty, you are a great king. You are used to comfort. How did you arrive here?" The king replied, "In the chariot." Nagasena smiled gently and said, "You have just said there is no chariot. Is it the wheels, the axle?" He repeated the king's own questions back to him, until the king had to concede that the chariot was nothing more than a convenient name for the collection of its parts, working together. Nagasena then delivered his final point. "Just so, Your Majesty, Nagasena is a convenient designation for the collection of the body, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness. In the highest sense, there is no permanent person to be found here. The truth of anatta does not erase us. It frees us. We are not a static noun, but a flowing verb. We are not a fixed thing, but a dynamic happening. Seeing this, in conjunction with the truth of impermanence, dismantles the very structure of our suffering, which is built on the false idea of a permanent me fighting for security in an ever-changing world. We have now seen that the world is a river, and that there is no separate swimmer. The river is all there is. So what is the nature of this river? What is the water itself made of? This final question takes us beyond the characteristics of existence and into its very ground. It leads us to the most subtle, profound, and luminous truth of all, the great, open, creative potential that is known as Śūnyatā, or emptiness. We have walked a long and winding path together. We have seen that our world is an ever-changing river of impermanence, of anicca. We have looked for a solid swimmer in that river, a permanent self, and found only a flowing, selfless process, the truth of anatta. We have seen that we are not a noun, but a verb. We are not a thing, but a happening. This leads us now to the very heart of reality, to the source of the river itself. It brings us to a concept so profound it can feel intimidating, a word so simple it is easily misunderstood, and a truth so liberating it has the power to untie every knot in our heart. This is the wisdom of Śūnyatā, the wisdom of emptiness. Before we take another step, it is vital that we clear the ground. For the Western ear, the word emptiness can sound terrifying. It conjures images of a cold, black void, of nihilism, of a meaningless universe where nothing matters. This is the absolute opposite of what Śūnyatā means. Emptiness is not the denial of existence. It is the ultimate affirmation of it, but in a way that is radically different from how we normally see things. The chair you are sitting on exists. The sound of my voice exists. The feeling of your own breath exists. Emptiness is not a statement that things are not here. It is a statement about how they are here. It means that nothing we see, touch, or think possesses a solid, separate, independent existence of its own. Everything is empty of a private, isolated self. Instead, everything arises in a vast, intricate, and beautiful web of relationships. This is the teaching of dependent origination. This is because that is. This is not because that is not. Nothing exists in a vacuum. Everything leans on everything else. Emptiness, then, is not nothingness. It is the truth of radical, absolute interconnectedness. Let us make this practical with a simple object, a cup. Hold the image of a cup in your mind. What makes this cup useful? Is it the clay walls? Is it the handle? Is it the glaze? Number? What makes the cup useful, what makes it a cup at all, is the empty space inside. Without that emptiness, it would just be a lump of clay, incapable of holding water or tea or anything else. Its function comes directly from its emptiness. Now think of the room you are in. What makes it a functional room? It is not the four walls, the floor, the ceiling. It is the empty space bounded by them, the space in which you can live and move and breathe. The emptiness is the most essential part of the room. Think of the hub of a wheel. It is the empty hole in the center that allows the axle to be inserted, that allows the entire wheel to turn. The function is born from the void. Now, let us apply this powerful metaphor to our own mind. We began this journey describing a mind that was too full of worries, plans, regrets, and opinions. Like the lump of clay, a mind that is completely full is useless for its highest purpose, the purpose of learning, growing, and realizing wisdom. A mind that is certain it already knows everything has no space to receive anything new. A mind that is full of prejudice has no room for compassion. A mind full of fear has no room for love. Emptiness, in the context of the mind, is not a state of being blank or stupid. It is a state of being open, receptive, curious, and spacious. It is the quality of a mind that is not trapped by its own conclusions. It is the supreme intelligence of humility. Emptiness, seen this way, is not a lack. It is pure, unbound potential. Because things are empty of a fixed, inherent essence, they are free. They are free from the prisons of our concepts and labels. Think about how we solidify the world with our words. We point to a person and say, "She is an angry person." We have taken a temporary, conditioned emotional state and turned it into a permanent, concrete identity. We have imprisoned her in our label. But the wisdom of emptiness reveals that she is empty of any inherent unchanging angerness. Her anger is a temporary wave arising from countless causes and conditions, perhaps a difficult childhood, a stressful day at work, or a physical pain. Because she is empty, she is also free to change. In the next moment, she has the potential to be compassionate, or joyful, or peaceful. Seeing her emptiness is the key to our own compassion. It allows us to relate to the flowing process of her life, rather than the fixed label of our judgment. This applies most critically to ourselves. When we fail at something, and the thought arises, I am a failure, we are creating a solid identity, a prison for ourselves. But when we understand our own emptiness, we see that failure was an event, a wave that has now passed. We are empty of a permanent failure essence. We are free. In the next moment, we have the potential to be a success, to be a learner, to be a beginner. Emptiness is the ultimate escape clause from the jail of our own self-concept. The great Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh offered a beautiful term to help us grasp this interconnected reality, inner being. He invites us to look deeply at a single sheet of paper. If we look with the eyes of emptiness, we do not just see a flat white sheet. We see a cloud floating in the sky. Without the cloud, there would be no rain. Without the rain, the trees could not grow. Without the trees, we could not make paper. So the cloud is in the paper. If we look deeper, we see the sunshine that nourished the tree. We see the logger who cut the tree down, and we see his parents who gave him life and the bread he ate for breakfast. We see the soil, the earth, and the minerals. If we were to remove any one of these so-called non-paper elements, the sheet of paper in our hands would be impossible. It would cease to exist. The paper, therefore, is empty of a separate, independent self. It is full of everything else in the cosmos. It interis with the sunshine, the cloud, the logger, and the wheat field. The same is true for us. You are not just you. You are the air you are breathing, the food you have eaten, the language you speak, the ideas you have learned, and the countless generations of ancestors who came before you. To see yourself as a separate, isolated island is the fundamental illusion. To understand your own emptiness is to understand your intimate connection with all of life. There is a classic Zen story that perfectly captures the necessary attitude for this understanding. A highly educated university professor, a man famous for his knowledge, traveled to visit a wise old Zen master named Nanin to inquire about the nature of Zen. Nanin welcomed him graciously and, as was custom, began to prepare tea. He placed a cup before the professor and began to pour. The tea filled the cup, rising to the brim. The professor watched, expecting him to stop. But Nanin kept pouring. The hot tea overflowed the cup, spilling onto the saucer and then onto the fine wooden table. The professor could stand it no longer. "Stop," he shouted. "The cup is full. It's overflowing. No more can go in." Nanin calmly stopped pouring, looked the professor in the eyes, and said, "Like this cup, you are full of your own opinions and speculations. How can I show you Zen unless you first empty your cup? We have spent our whole lives filling our cup, filling it with ideas of who we are, what the world is, what is right, and what is wrong. This journey, this path to inner peace and deep sleep, is not about adding more knowledge to that already full cup. It is about the courageous act of emptying it. It is about letting go of our certainties to make space for a deeper truth. Emptiness is not a destination we arrive at. It is the open space we allow to be revealed. It is the ultimate good news. It means that change is always possible. It means healing is always possible. It means we are not trapped by our past or defined by our labels. It is the very ground of our freedom. We have now explored this sublime concept with our intellect, using the language of cups and clouds, rivers and sky. But Buddhism is not merely a philosophy to be debated. It is a reality to be experienced. How do we move from the idea of emptiness to the direct feeling of it in our own being, especially when our minds feel so impossibly full? The pathway to this experience is not complex. It begins with the simple, radical act of direct observation. It begins when we turn our attention away from the world outside and inward, to watch the drama of our own consciousness, as if we were sitting in a quiet theater, waiting for the curtain to rise on a play. We will now take a seat and watch the stage of the mind. We have arrived at the edge of a great mystery, the truth of emptiness. We have explored it with our intellect, using words and metaphors to point towards a reality that is open, interconnected, and full of potential. But philosophy alone cannot quench a thirsty heart. Wisdom is not found in a book. It is found in the laboratory of our own experience. So now, we move from the map to the territory. We will learn the first fundamental practice for experiencing the spaciousness of our own true nature. We will take a seat in the silent theater of the mind and learn how to watch the play without getting lost in it. The stage is your awareness. The actors who command so much of our attention are your thoughts. For most of our lives, we do not have a relationship with our thoughts. We have a relationship as our thoughts. We are completely fused with the stream of our thinking. We are not watching the movie. We are the main character, tossed about by every twist and turn of the plot. When a thought of worry appears in the mind, what if I fail the presentation tomorrow? We do not see it as a thought. We become worry itself. Our body tenses, our heart beats faster, our breath becomes shallow. When a thought of anger arises, how dare they say that to me? We do not see it as a fleeting mental event. We become angry. We feel the heat rise in our face. We clench our fists. We are consumed by the fire of indignation. We are in a trance, a waking dream, spun by the unceasing storyteller in our head. We believe every word it says. The practice of mindfulness begins with a single revolutionary act. The moment you realize that you are thinking. It is a subtle but profound shift. It is the moment you step back. It is the moment you move from being the actor on the stage to being the audience member who is watching. In that moment, you make an incredible discovery. The thinker and the thought are not the same as the awareness that knows the thought. A space has just opened up. This is the great shift. The most powerful metaphor for this practice is that of the sky and the clouds. For most of our lives, we believe we are the clouds. When a dark, heavy storm cloud of sadness or depression moves in, we think, I am sad. We contract around it, believing its gloomy reality is the whole truth. When a jagged lightning cloud of anger flashes through, we think, I am furious. We become the electrical charge. When a thick, disorienting fog of confusion descends, we think, I am lost. But this practice invites you to consider a different identity. What if you are not the clouds? What if you are the sky? The sky is the vast, open, boundless awareness in which all the clouds appear. The sky is never harmed by the storm. It is never stained by the fog. It is never burned by the lightning. It simply allows every cloud to arise, to be there for a while, and to pass away, without resistance, without judgment. The sky's nature is peaceful, open, and unchanging. To realize that you are the sky, not the clouds, is to find a sanctuary of peace that is always available, no matter what the weather is like in your mind. So how do we do this? How do we practice being the sky? We begin with a simple, gentle technique. We can call it noting or labeling. As you sit in quiet observation, you will inevitably notice that your mind has wandered. You have gotten lost in a story. The moment you notice this, and that moment of noticing is a small victory of mindfulness, you gently, without any criticism, apply a soft mental label to the thought. Let's say you find yourself mentally rehearsing your to-do list for the afternoon. Instead of scolding yourself for not being focused, you just whisper in your mind, planning, or thinking. That's it. A thought about a past argument appears. You gently note, remembering. A thought about something you're anxious about in the future arises. You note, worrying. A fantasy about a vacation. Dreaming. A harsh thought about yourself. Judging. The tone of this label is everything. It is not the sharp, critical voice of a school teacher. It is the soft, compassionate whisper of a loving parent to a child who has woken from a nightmare. Oh, sweetie, you were just dreaming. The label is not meant to analyze the thought or to get rid of it. It serves two crucial functions. First, it cuts the storyline. The moment you label worrying, you have stepped out of the dramatic narrative of the worry and have become the one who is aware of worrying. You have woken up from the trance. Second, it depersonalizes the thought. It is no longer my catastrophic anxiety about the future. It is simply the impersonal, universal, human activity of worrying. It transforms the thought from a solid, terrifying monster that is unique to you into a transient, common mental event. It's a process, not a thing. It is a nada in action. As you continue this practice, something remarkable begins to happen. As you watch thought after thought arise and pass away, as you label them gently and let them go, a deep insight begins to dawn, not as an idea, but as a felt reality. You start to realize these thoughts are not me, and they are not mine. You didn't choose to have most of them. They just appear, bubbling up from the depths of your subconscious like bubbles in a pot of water. You notice they have no real substance. They are like ghosts, like projections on a screen. They seem so solid and important one moment and are gone the next, leaving no trace. And most importantly, you begin to identify not with the ever-changing thoughts, but with the silent, stable awareness that is watching them. This awareness doesn't come and go. It is always here. It is the background, the screen, the sky. It is the silent witness. Discovering this witnessing presence is discovering a home within yourself that is safe from the storms of the mind. You realize you don't have to believe every thought that arises. You have a choice. You can let it go. This is the beginning of true freedom. Imagine you are sitting on a beautiful green riverbank on a warm afternoon. The river before you is wide and it flows at a steady pace. You notice that leaves of all kinds are floating down the river. Brown leaves, green leaves, small leaves, large leaves. Each leaf is a thought. This is the state of your mind. For most of our lives, we have a habit. As we sit on the bank, we see a particularly interesting-looking leaf float by perhaps a leaf of a brilliant idea or a dark, scary-looking leaf of worry. Without thinking, we jump into the river. We grab onto the leaf, and immediately we are caught in the current. We are being tossed and turned, struggling to keep our head above water, completely identified with this one leaf, this one thought. We are carried far downstream until we are exhausted, and we finally manage to crawl back onto the bank, dripping and tired. We sit for a moment, and then another interesting leaf comes by, and we jump right back in. This is the state of being lost in thought. The practice of mindfulness, of watching the mind, is simply this. You make a resolution to stay on the bank. That is all. Your job is not to stop the river, which is impossible. Your job is not to clean all the leaves out of the water, which is also impossible. Your job is not even to have a preference for certain leaves over others. Your job is simply to sit on the bank, feel the solid ground beneath you, and watch the leaves float by. A leaf called planning floats by. You see it clearly, and you let it pass. A leaf called sad memory floats by. You acknowledge it, and you let it pass. A leaf called self-criticism floats by. You see it, you feel a slight pang, and you let it pass. You are not the river. You are not the leaves. You are the calm, grounded, unwavering observer on the bank. This is how we begin to experience the emptiness we spoke of earlier. We see directly that our thoughts are empty of substance, empty of any inherent reality. They are fleeting, insubstantial phantoms. And in seeing their emptiness, we discover the fullness of our own awareness, the vast open sky of the mind that has room for every thought, every feeling, every experience. As we become more practiced at sitting on this riverbank, watching the leaves of our thoughts, our attention becomes sharper, and we start to notice something else. We notice the river's current. We see that at times the river is slow and placid, and the leaves drift by peacefully. At other times, the river becomes a rushing, powerful torrent, and the leaves are swept by in a chaotic frenzy. We realize that the thoughts are often being driven by a deeper power, by unseen forces beneath the surface. These powerful undercurrents, which give so much energy and momentum to our thinking, are our emotions. To find lasting peace, it is not enough to just watch the leaves on the surface. We must also become intimate with the energy of the river itself. Our journey now takes us from the stage of the mind into the very heart of the drama, the raw, vibrant, and powerful world of our feelings. We have been sitting on the riverbank of our mind, learning to watch the leaves of our thoughts float by without jumping in. This is a practice of profound peace. But as we sit there, we cannot ignore the river's current. Sometimes it is gentle and slow. At other times, it is a powerful, churning torrent that sweeps everything along in its path. This current, this deep, energetic force that so often gives our thoughts their power and direction, is the world of our emotions. For most of us, our entire life has been a struggle with this current. We either try to dam it up and pretend it isn't there, or we are helplessly swept away by it, drowning in its waves. There is another way, a middle path. This is the path of learning to feel, to be with the raw energy of our emotions without being consumed by them. It is the art of embracing the wave. Our first step is to completely change our fundamental relationship with our feelings. We are conditioned to see certain emotions as good and others as bad. Joy, love, and excitement are welcomed friends, but anxiety, grief, anger, and fear are seen as enemies at the gate, to be fought off, denied, or suppressed at all costs. This creates a state of constant inner warfare. The great 13th century poet Rumi offered a radical alternative in his beautiful poem, The Guest House. He invites us to imagine that this human being we inhabit is a guest house, and every morning there is a new arrival. You don't get to choose your guests. One day, the guest is joy, who wants to dance in every room. The next day, the guest is a deep depression, who sits heavily in a corner and will not speak. Another day, a flash of meanness arrives unexpectedly, or a surge of jealousy. Our instinct is to slam the door on these unwelcome visitors. We pretend we are not home. We try to numb ourselves or distract ourselves until they go away. The practice of mindfulness invites us to do the opposite. It invites us to be the gracious host. It asks us to meet every single guest at the door, to welcome them in, and to give them a seat. Even if the guest is a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture, even then, the instruction is to treat each guest honorably. This is a revolutionary act of self-compassion. It is a declaration of peace in our own inner civil war. We stop fighting with our own experience. We simply allow it to be here. Welcoming the emotion is the first step. It does not mean we approve of it or want it to stay forever. It just means we stop resisting its presence. We acknowledge reality. We say to ourselves, I see that anxiety is visiting me today. Welcome. I see you. This welcome creates a crucial pause, a sacred space between the arrival of the feeling and our habitual reaction to it. Just because you have invited a guest into your house does not mean you must obey their every command. Imagine the guest of intense anger arrives, red-faced and shouting. Our typical reaction is either to become possessed by the guest, to let them take over the house and start breaking the furniture and screaming at everyone this is indulgence, an unskillful expression, or we shove the guest into a closet and lock the door. This is suppression, where the anger will fester and turn toxic, poisoning the whole house from within. The middle way, the way of wisdom, is to open the door and say, I see you, anger. You are powerful. Welcome. Come, sit down. I will listen to you, but I will not let you destroy this house. In that moment of conscious hospitality, you are no longer the anger. You are the spacious awareness that is hosting the anger. You have created a space between the raw energy of the feeling and the habitual, often destructive, action. In this space, freedom is born. You can feel angry without being an angry person. You can feel sadness without collapsing into a story of being a sad person. You retain your seat as the host, not the hostage. So how do we do this? How do we sit with such a powerful guest without being overwhelmed? The key is to drop out of the story in your head and into the raw sensations in your body. Emotions are not just ideas. They are physical, energetic events. When the guest of anger is sitting in your guest house, ask yourself with gentle curiosity, where do I feel this in my body? You might discover a burning heat in your face and neck, a clenching in your jaw, a tight vibrating energy in your chest and arms. Instead of focusing on the story, he shouldn't have said that. It's not fair. Bring your full, kind attention to the raw physical sensations. Breathe into the tightness in your chest. Feel the heat in your face without judgment. Just be with the energy as pure sensation. When anxiety arrives, locate its physical signature. Is it a hollow, churning feeling in your stomach? A tightness around your throat? A cold, tingling sensation in your hands? Gently place your awareness there. Be with it. Don't try to make it go away. Don't analyze it. Just feel it. This practice is profoundly effective because it unplugs the emotion from its fuel source. The fuel source is the story, the narrative, the endless thinking that we layer on top of the raw feeling. This brings us to another of the Buddha's most practical teachings, the parable of the two arrows. The first arrow is the direct, unavoidable pain of life. Someone insults you, and you feel the immediate sting of it. That is the first arrow. It happens. The second arrow is the story you add on top. How dare he say that? He always disrespects me. Nobody values me. I'm worthless. This second arrow, and the third and the fourth, are the ones that cause the real, lasting suffering. They are the arrows we shoot into ourselves. The initial sting of the first arrow might last only a few seconds. The suffering from the volley of second arrows can last for days, weeks, or even years. The practice of dropping into the body and feeling the raw sensation is the practice of learning to sit with the first arrow without firing the second. You allow the clean energy of the initial feeling to move through you and dissipate, which it will always do if you don't fuel it with more stories. You learn to let the wave of emotion rise, crest, and pass, without building a dam of resistance that causes a catastrophic flood. Rumi understood this so deeply. His poem concludes with a stunning insight into the purpose of these difficult guests. He writes, "The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. What if our most difficult emotions are not problems to be solved, but teachers in disguise? What if grief is here to teach us what we truly love? What if anxiety is here to show us where we are clinging too tightly, where we lack faith in the flow of life? What if anger is here to show us where a boundary has been violated, where an injustice needs to be addressed with clear, compassionate action? When we treat these guests honorably, when we listen to them without being consumed by them, they deliver their message and then they leave. The guest house of our being is then clearer, wiser, and more spacious than it was before. They may have swept the house empty of its furniture, but they have cleared us out for some new, unexpected delight. This is the practice of embracing the wave. It is a path of profound kindness toward ourselves. We stop fighting with our own inner life. We become the host of the guest house, the wide, accommodating space of awareness in which every feeling is allowed to be. We learn to ground ourselves in the direct experience of the body, staying with the clean energy of the first arrow and letting go of the toxic stories of the second. We allow the natural, impermanent waves of emotion to rise and fall without believing that we are in danger of drowning. We have now seen how our entanglement with the stories of our thoughts and our resistance to the energy of our emotions create the very fabric of our discontent. This constant pattern of grasping at what we like and pushing away what we dislike is a form of bondage. It is a tiring, full-time job of holding on and fighting back. The obvious next step on our journey to liberation, therefore, is to explore the profound relief and freedom that comes when we learn, quite simply, to unclench our fist and let go. We have seen how the practice of mindfulness can bring us home, to the present moment, anchoring us in the reality of our own breath, our own bodies, our own immediate experience. It is a practice of stopping, of seeing what is truly here, without the filter of our stories and judgments. But once we have stopped, once our eyes are open to the landscape of our inner and outer world, a question naturally arises. Which way do we walk? It is not enough to simply be aware of our position. We need a direction, a guide, a reliable compass that can lead us out of the dense forest of confusion and towards the open plains of clarity and peace. This is where the Buddha did not simply offer a diagnosis, but a clear, practical, and profound prescription. He offered a map. This map, this guide for living, is the fourth of the Four Noble Truths, the truth of the path leading to the cessation of suffering. It is known as the Noble Eightfold Path. This path is not a set of commandments handed down from on high, nor is it a rigid sequence of steps to be completed in order. To think of it as a linear ladder is to miss its elegant and organic nature entirely. It is better to imagine it as 8 threads, woven together to create a single, strong rope that can pull us from the depths. Or perhaps, like the 8 spokes of a wheel, all connected to a central hub and all essential for the wheel to turn smoothly. Each part of the path supports and deepens every other part. To practice one is to practice them all. This is not a path of radical, overnight transformation, but a gradual process of cultivation, a way of living and being that, moment by moment, reorients our entire existence towards wisdom, compassion, and freedom. It is a complete design for life. To make this profound path more accessible, we can group these 8 factors into 3 essential aspects of human experience, 3 areas of training that together create a whole and balanced practice. They are ethical conduct, which is called sila, mental discipline, called samadhi, and wisdom, called prajna. Ethical conduct is the foundation. It concerns our relationship with the world, our speech, and our actions. It is about creating an outer life of harmlessness and integrity, an environment that is peaceful enough to allow for the difficult work of looking inward. Mental discipline is the training of the heart and mind itself. It is where we learn to tame the restless energy of our thoughts, to cultivate focus, and to develop a stable and resilient awareness. And finally, wisdom is the goal and the fruit of the path. It is the clear seeing that cuts through delusion, the direct insight into the nature of reality that truly liberates the mind from its chains. But before we explore each of these factors in detail, it is crucial to understand the spirit in which this path is to be walked. It is called the middle way. To understand the middle way, we can turn to a story from the Buddha's own life. Before his enlightenment, as a wandering ascetic, he had thrown himself into the extreme of self-mortification. He believed, as many did at the time, that by punishing the body, by denying it every comfort, he could liberate the spirit. He fasted until his ribs showed through his skin, until he could touch his backbone from his stomach. He slept on beds of thorns and exposed himself to the harshest elements, pushing his body to the very brink of death. But one day, emaciated and weak, he realized that this path was not leading to clarity. It was only leading to a dull, exhausted mind, a mind too weak to find any insight. This harsh denial was just another form of craving, a craving for non-existence, a violent rejection of life. It was a dead end. He remembered his life as a prince, a life of complete sensual indulgence, where every desire was met, every pleasure was available. He knew intimately that this other extreme, the path of hedonism, also did not lead to lasting happiness. It only led to a restless heart, always seeking the next thrill, never satisfied, trapped in a cycle of craving and disappointment. Both extremes, the path of indulgence and the path of severe denial, were flawed. They were out of balance. It was at this point, sitting by a river, that he is said to have overheard a musician on a boat teaching his student how to tune a sitar. The master said, "If you tighten the string too much, it will become shrill and it will snap. If you leave the string too loose, it will not make a sound. Only the string that is tuned just right, not too tight and not too loose, can produce beautiful, resonant music." This simple instruction struck the Buddha's weakened mind like a bolt of lightning. He understood. The spiritual path was not about violence, either towards oneself or towards one's desires. It was about tuning. It was about finding a middle way, a path of exquisite balance between effort and ease, between discipline and acceptance. The string that is too tight is the mindset of the striving, perfectionistic practitioner. It is the voice of harsh self-judgment, of impatience, of trying to force enlightenment. This approach is filled with tension and anxiety, and it inevitably leads to burnout, frustration, and the feeling of failure. It snaps. The string that is too loose is the mindset of laxity and complacency. It is the path of spiritual bypassing, of making excuses, of indulging in unskillful habits without mindfulness. This approach leads to stagnation. No music is produced, no progress is made. The Noble Eightfold Path is this perfectly tuned instrument. It is the middle way that skillfully navigates between these two unproductive extremes. It asks for effort, but a joyful, consistent effort, not a grim, white-knuckled struggle. It asks for discipline, but a gentle, compassionate discipline, not a rigid, self-punishing one. It is a path that honors the reality of our human experience with all its messiness and complexities, and provides the tools to work with that reality intelligently and gracefully. It is a path of wakefulness, not of warfare. So let us look again at the three great pillars of this path. The first, ethical conduct, or sila, includes three factors: right speech, right action, and right livelihood. This is the ground upon which our house is built. It is the commitment to shaping our outward behavior in a way that causes no harm to ourselves or to others. When our actions and words are aligned with kindness and truth, our minds are naturally freer from the poisons of guilt, remorse, and agitation. A clear conscience is a prerequisite for a calm mind. The second pillar, mental discipline, or samadhi, includes three more factors: right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. This is the active training of the mind. Right effort is the balanced energy, the sitar string tuned just right, that allows us to gently encourage wholesome states of mind and let go of unwholesome ones. Right mindfulness is the practice we have already touched upon, the ability to remain present and aware without judgment. And right concentration is the fruit of this training, the ability to unify the mind, to gather its scattered energies into a single stable point of focus, creating a state of profound stillness and clarity. The third and final pillar, the very roof of the house we are building, is wisdom, or prajna. It includes the final two factors, right view and right intention. Right intention, or right thought, is the cultivation of thoughts and intentions that are rooted in kindness, compassion, and the desire for release, rather than thoughts rooted in greed, hatred, and delusion. And right view is the foundation of the entire path. It is the correct understanding of the nature of reality. It is seeing things not as we wish them to be or as we fear them to be, but as they truly are. It is the deep, experiential understanding of the Four Noble Truths, of impermanence, and of the selfless nature of existence. These three trainings, Sila, Samadhi, and Prajna, are not separate. They are completely interwoven. A life of ethical conduct makes the mind calm and easy to train. A trained and concentrated mind is the perfect instrument for seeing reality clearly, and the wisdom that arises from that clear seeing naturally reinforces our commitment to ethical, compassionate living. It creates an upward spiral, a feedback loop of ever-increasing clarity, kindness, and peace. This path is the Buddha's great gift. It is a timeless and universal framework for human flourishing. It is the compass that, if we learn to read it and trust it, can guide any one of us, right here in the midst of our modern lives, toward the end of our own suffering. And this entire journey of understanding, this entire voyage across the ocean of existence, begins with the first step of wisdom. It begins with learning how to see. It begins with right view. The Noble Eightfold Path is not a journey we can begin blindly. A traveler without a map, without a sense of the terrain, is simply lost, wandering in circles. The very first factor of the path, the one that illuminates all the others, is right view. In the ancient Pali language, the term is sama ditteti. The word sama does not mean right in the sense of being morally correct versus wrong. It more accurately translates to complete, perfect, or skillful. So, right view is a complete view, a skillful way of seeing that untangles confusion and leads to liberation, as opposed to a wrong view, which is partial, fragmented, and leads only to further entanglement and suffering. It is the lens through which we must look if the world is to come into focus. Without it, our efforts will be misplaced, our intentions will be misguided, and our actions will be fruitless. At its most fundamental level, right view is the deep, penetrating, and personal understanding of the Four Noble Truths. It is not enough to memorize them as a catechism. It is not enough to agree with them intellectually. Right view is to see these truths operating in the laboratory of your own experience, moment by moment. It is to see, with undeniable clarity, the presence of dissatisfaction, of dukkha, in your own life, not just in great tragedies, but in the subtle friction of daily existence. It is to see, without flinching, how this dissatisfaction arises from the relentless engine of craving, of tanha, the constant wanting and not wanting. It is to hold as a living possibility in your heart the reality that this friction can cease, that there is an end to this self-inflicted struggle. And it is to see that the Noble Eightfold Path itself is the living, breathing way to that cessation. To have right view is to have this fundamental framework for reality imprinted not just on your mind, but on your very cells. From this foundation, right view blossoms into the direct seeing of the three fundamental characteristics of all existence. The first is anicca, or impermanence. We may know this intellectually. Of course, we say everything changes. But right view is to see it, to feel it, as an absolute and constant reality. It is to watch a pleasant feeling arise, knowing it will pass. It is to watch a difficult emotion surge, knowing that it too will pass. It is to look at our own bodies, our relationships, our careers, and see them not as fixed, solid entities, but as dynamic processes, like rivers, constantly in flux. The suffering we experience from loss is not caused by the change itself, but by our resistance to it, by our desperate attempt to build a permanent home on the shifting sands of time. Right view is the wisdom that gently lets go of this struggle, that learns to dance with the flow of life rather than trying to dam the river. The second mark of existence seen through right view is anatta, or no self. This is perhaps the most radical and challenging insight in all of Buddhist thought. Our entire lives are built around the assumption of a central me, a permanent, independent self who is the thinker of thoughts, the feeler of feelings, and the author of our life story. Right view invites us to look for this self. Where is it? Is it in your body? Your body is changing, made of non-you elements like food and water. Is it in your thoughts? Thoughts come and go like clouds. Is it in your feelings? They are fleeting and unreliable. When we look closely, with the precision of a trained mind, we find not a solid core, but a collection of interconnected processes, the five aggregates of form, feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. The self is a useful convention, a label, but it is not an ultimate reality. To see this is not to be annihilated, it is to be liberated. An immense burden is lifted, the burden of constantly defending, promoting, and worrying about this fictional self. It opens the door to a profound sense of interconnection with all of life. This points to a crucial distinction that right view makes: the difference between conceptual knowledge and experiential wisdom. You can read 1,000 books about swimming. You can learn the physics of buoyancy, the proper stroke techniques, the ideal breathing patterns. This is knowledge, but it will not keep you from drowning. Only when you get in the water and your body learns for itself how to stay afloat have you gained wisdom. It is the same with these truths. We can learn the Pali terms, we can debate the philosophy, we can collect concepts as a way to seem wise, but this is just carrying a menu instead of eating the food. Right view is the beginning of tasting the food for ourselves. It is the aha moment, the flash of insight during meditation or in the middle of a mundane day, where you suddenly see the impermanent, selfless nature of a thought or a feeling. This direct seeing is what begins to transform us. There is a famous parable that perfectly illustrates the difference between a partial view and right view. A king once gathered a group of men who had been blind from birth. He brought an elephant before them and asked each one to describe it. The first man touched the elephant's leg and declared, "An elephant is like a mighty pillar." The second man touched the tusk and said, "No, you are wrong. An elephant is like a plowshare, sharp and smooth." A third man got a hold of the tail and announced, "You are both mistaken. An elephant is like a rope." Another touched the ear and was convinced the elephant was like a large, leathery fan. Soon, they were all shouting at each other, each one absolutely certain that their limited, partial experience was the whole truth. Most of us live our lives like these blind men. We grasp onto one small piece of reality or political beliefs, our personal history, our emotional reactions, and we declare it to be the entire truth. We build our identity around this fragment and go to war with anyone whose fragment looks different. Wrong view is this fragmentation. Right view is the ability to have sight, to step back and see the whole elephant. It is the ability to see how the leg, the tusk, the tail, and the ear are all part of a larger interconnected reality. It is a holistic vision, a perspective that doesn't deny the partial truths, but sees them in their proper context. It is this capacity for a bigger picture that dissolves conflict and replaces it with understanding. Functionally, right view acts as a powerful, clarifying agent for the mind. When you see things through the lens of right view, you begin to depersonalize your experience. When anger arises, instead of saying, "I am angry," and becoming completely identified with that state, the mind with right view simply notes, "Ah, there is anger. This is an energy that has arisen. It is unpleasant. It is conditioned. It is impermanent." By not claiming ownership of the anger, you rob it of its fuel. You are no longer fanning the flames. You are simply allowing the fire to burn out on its own. The same applies to greed, jealousy, fear, and even pride. Right view sees them for what they are: impersonal, conditioned phenomena passing through the vast space of awareness. This seeing is freedom itself. This is why right view is placed at the very beginning of the path. It is the guide for all the other 7 factors. Your view dictates your intention. Your view shapes your speech and actions. Your view informs your effort and your mindfulness. If you believe, for instance, that happiness comes from accumulating wealth and possessions, a form of wrong view, then your intentions, speech, actions, and effort will all be directed towards that goal, leading to a life of anxiety and competition. But if your view is that true happiness comes from letting go of craving and cultivating inner peace, right view, then your entire life will naturally reorient itself around that understanding. Right view provides the destination on the map so that right effort knows where to drive the car. It is a gradual process. We begin with a borrowed view by listening to the teachings and trusting that there is wisdom in this path. This is called learning. Then, we begin to contemplate it, to think about it deeply, to see how it might apply to our lives. This is reflecting. But the culmination, the true dawning of right view, comes from practicing, especially through meditation, which allows us to see these truths directly for ourselves beyond any doubt. It is the North Star of our spiritual journey, the constant reference point that ensures we are always heading in the direction of freedom. Once we begin to see the world and ourselves with this newfound clarity, the next step on the path becomes almost effortless. When the map is clear, our desire to walk in the right direction naturally follows. This brings us to the cultivation of a wise and compassionate will, the cultivation of right intention. If right view is the eye that sees the path, then right intention is the will that sets our feet upon it. It is the rudder of the mind, steering us away from the rocky shores of greed and hatred and towards the open sea of liberation. It is the bridge between seeing and doing, the crucial link that translates clarity of vision into purpose of heart. Without right intention, right view remains a sterile, intellectual understanding, a beautiful map that we never use. It is our intention that gives our life its direction and its moral flavor. Our actions and words do not arise out of a vacuum. They are born from the thoughts and motives we cultivate in the silent chamber of our own mind. To purify our actions, we must first purify the source from which they spring. Right intention, or samasankappa, is the second factor of the Noble Eightfold Path and the final element of the division of wisdom. It is the conscious and deliberate aspiration to align our inner life with our deepest understanding. It involves harnessing the energy of our will, not to get what we want in the worldly sense, but to move towards what is wholesome, healing, and liberating. It is not about controlling every thought that pops into our head saying impossible task, but rather about choosing which thoughts we will invite to stay, which ones we will water and nurture, and which ones we will gently show the door. This is our area of true agency. The world may present us with countless provocations, but the intention with which we respond is always our own. The Buddha spoke of 3 specific kinds of right intention that stand in direct opposition to the 3 great poisons of the mind. These are the intention of renunciation, the intention of goodwill, and the intention of harmlessness. The first, the intention of renunciation, is the antidote to the poison of grasping and sensual craving. The word renunciation can sound severe to the modern ear, evoking images of deprivation and self-denial. But this is a misunderstanding. The Pali word nekkhamma is more about letting go or yielding. It is not a grim rejection of the world, but a joyful release of the burdens we carry. It is born from the clear seeing of right view, which understands that clinging to impermanent pleasures is a source of profound and constant stress. The intention of renunciation is the intention to find happiness, not by adding more things, more experiences, more validation, but by simplifying, by letting go of our neurotic attachments. Imagine you are holding a burning piece of coal in your hand. The intention of craving is to hold on tighter, believing its heat is a source of life. The intention of renunciation is to recognize the pain it is causing and to willingly open your hand and let it fall. It is a movement towards freedom. It is choosing the peace of non-attachment over the fleeting thrill of possession. This intention manifests as a desire for simplicity, contentment with what is, and a gradual disentanglement from the frantic pursuit of more. The second form of right intention is the intention of goodwill, or non-ill will. This is the direct antidote to the poison of anger, aversion, and hatred. It is the conscious cultivation of metta, or loving kindness. It is the sincere and active wish for the happiness and well-being of all beings, without exception. This begins with ourselves. We develop the intention to be a true friend to our own heart, treating our own failings and struggles with kindness rather than with harsh judgment. From that foundation, we extend this goodwill outwards. When a person irritates us, the habitual, unskillful intention is one of ill will. We mentally criticize them, we wish them ill, we replay the offense in our minds. Right intention is the practice of consciously interrupting this pattern. It is the choice to replace the thought of resentment with a thought of goodwill, to wish that person peace, to remember their own humanity and their own struggles. This is not about condoning harmful actions or becoming a doormat. It is a profound act of mental hygiene. It recognizes that holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. The intention of goodwill is the act of putting down the poison for our own sake, and in doing so, we make the world a slightly less hostile place. The third form of right intention is the intention of harmlessness or compassion. This is the antidote to the poison of cruelty and indifference. The Pali word is avihimsa, a deep and active commitment to non-harming. While goodwill wishes for others to be happy, compassion arises when we encounter the suffering of others, and it is the sincere wish for that suffering to be relieved. It springs from the wisdom of right view, which understands our profound interconnection. We see that the line between ourselves and others is porous, that in some fundamental way, to harm another is to harm ourselves. This intention extends far beyond the obvious avoidance of physical violence. It is an intention not to harm with our words, through gossip, slander, or harsh speech. It is an intention not to harm with our thoughts, by indulging in schadenfreude or callous indifference. It is an active empathy, a heart that is moved by the pain of the world and aspires to be a source of solace and relief, not another source of pain. There is a timeless story, often attributed to the Cherokee people, that beautifully illustrates the essence of right intention. An old man is teaching his grandson about life. "A fight is going on inside me," he says to the boy. "It is a terrible fight, and it is between two wolves. One is evil. He has anger, envy, sorrow, regret, greed, arrogance, self-pity, guilt, resentment, inferiority, lies, false pride, superiority, and ego." He continued, "The other is good. He is joy, peace, love, hope, serenity, humility, kindness, benevolence, empathy, generosity, truth, compassion, and faith. The same fight is going on inside you, and inside every other person too." The grandson thought about it for a minute and then asked his grandfather, "Which wolf will win?" The old man simply replied, "The one you feed." Right intention is the conscious act of feeding the right wolf. Every thought is a handful of food. A thought of jealousy thrown to the dark wolf makes it stronger, more likely to dominate our mind. A thought of generosity thrown to the light wolf nourishes it, helping it grow in strength and influence. Our mind, in this sense, is like a garden. If left untended, it will be overrun by weeds. Weeds of negativity, resentment, and greed grow effortlessly. They require no cultivation, but the flowers of kindness, the fruits of wisdom, the vegetables of compassions, these must be planted deliberately. They must be watered with attention, protected from pests, and tended with patience. Right intention is the decision to become a skillful gardener of your own mind. It is the willingness to do the daily work of pulling the weeds of unwholesome thoughts and planting the seeds of wholesome ones. It is not about achieving a perfectly weed-free garden overnight, but about the gentle, persistent, daily practice of cultivation. The beauty of this practice is that the more you tend the garden, the stronger the wholesome plants become, and the less space and sunlight there is for the weeds to grow. Over time, the entire ecosystem of the mind begins to change. In our daily lives, this practice begins with mindfulness. We first learn to simply notice the flavor of our intentions without judgment. As you are about to speak, you can ask yourself, what is the intention behind this word? Is it to help or to harm, to clarify or to confuse, to connect or to divide? As you go about your day, you can notice the subtle currents of thought. There is a feeling of envy. In that moment of recognition, you have a choice. You can feed the wolf of envy by comparing yourself to others and dwelling on what you lack, or you can recognize it as a painful state and gently introduce a thought of goodwill for the other person's success and a thought of compassion for the pain of your own feeling of lack. This is not suppression. It is a wise and gentle substitution. It is a quiet revolution in the mind. Our intentions are the invisible architects of our destiny. They are the seeds that will ripen into the words we speak and the actions we perform. By purifying our intentions, we purify our entire being at the very source. When our inner world is consistently oriented towards letting go, towards goodwill, and towards harmlessness, our outer world cannot help but begin to reflect that inner reality. Our words will naturally become kinder, our actions more compassionate. We create our world, first, with our thoughts. From the wellspring of our intentions, the first river that flows out into the world is our speech. Our words are thoughts made audible, the primary way we connect with, influence, and impact the people around us. They have the power to build palaces of understanding or to demolish relationships in an instant. A single, carelessly spoken word can plant a seed of doubt that lasts a lifetime, while a single, timely word of encouragement can give someone the strength to persevere through their darkest hour. Recognizing this immense power, the Buddha designated right speech as the third factor of the path and the first pillar of ethical conduct. It is here that our inner practice meets the outer world. It is the first test of our cultivation, a moment-to-moment opportunity to transform our most common activity into a profound spiritual practice. Right speech, or samavacha, is far more than simply a commitment not to lie. It is a comprehensive approach to communication, a subtle and skillful art that encompasses not just the content of our words, but also their intention, their tone, and their timing. The teachings outline 4 specific aspects of right speech, 4 guidelines that, when practiced together, can transform our relationships and purify our minds. These are to abstain from falsehood, to abstain from divisive speech, to abstain from harsh speech, and to abstain from idle chatter. This is not a list of rigid prohibitions designed to make us anxious about talking, but rather a wise diagnostic tool, a mirror we can hold up to our communication to see where it is skillful and where it is causing harm. The first aspect is the foundation of all meaningful communication, abstaining from false speech. At its most basic level, this is a commitment to telling the truth, but its scope is much wider. It includes the subtle exaggerations we use to make a story more interesting or to make ourselves look better. It includes the half-truths and omissions we use to manipulate a situation to our advantage. It includes making promises we have no intention of keeping, and it includes the deceptive silence of allowing someone to believe something that we know is untrue. To practice right speech is to dedicate oneself to a radical truthfulness. This commitment has a profoundly liberating effect. Living a life of dishonesty, even in small ways, requires an enormous amount of mental energy. You must constantly remember which story you told to which person, a precarious house of cards that is always on the verge of collapse. Living truthfully dissolves this burden. It creates a mind that is at ease with itself, and it builds a foundation of trust with others that is priceless. When people know that your word is reliable, communication becomes simple, clear, and powerful. The second aspect of right speech is to abstain from divisive speech. This is the practice of refraining from slander, malicious gossip, and any words intended to create enmity and discord between people. It is the refusal to carry tales from one person to another, setting them against each other for our own amusement or advantage. This is a particularly insidious form of wrong speech, and it is rampant in our modern world and office politics, in social cliques, and most virulently on the internet, where anonymous gossip can ruin lives. To practice this aspect of right speech is to make a conscious decision to be an agent of harmony, not of discord. It means that when you hear something negative about another person, you allow that story to die with you. You become a dead end for gossip. Instead of speaking words that separate, you consciously choose to speak words that encourage understanding, that highlight common ground, and that promote reconciliation. It is the commitment to use your voice not as a wedge to drive people apart, but as a thread to stitch them together. The third aspect is to abstain from harsh speech. Words can be weapons, and their wounds can fester for years. Harsh speech includes the obvious forms like shouting, insulting, and name-calling, but it also encompasses the more subtle forms of verbal aggression: biting sarcasm, belittling comments disguised as jokes, condescending tones, and passive-aggressive remarks. It is the recognition that the music of our voice is often more important than the lyrics. You can speak a truth with a tone of anger and judgment that makes it impossible for the other person to hear, or you can speak that same truth with a tone of gentleness and respect that allows it to be received. Practicing this form of right speech means cultivating a gentle tongue. It is about speaking to others, even when in disagreement, with the same courtesy and respect you would wish for yourself. It is the understanding that every person possesses a fundamental dignity, and our speech should honor that dignity, never violate it. This practice softens our own heart and creates a space of safety for others, allowing for true and honest connection. The fourth and final aspect of right speech is to abstain from idle chatter. This is speech that is empty, pointless, and devoid of purpose. It is the endless gossip about celebrities, the mindless commentary on trivial matters, the nervous filling of silence with noise. In our hyper-connected age, this is perhaps the most challenging aspect to practice. We are constantly bombarded with information and given platforms to voice every fleeting opinion. The practice of abstaining from idle chatter is not a call to be perpetually serious and solemn. Joyful, lighthearted conversation has its place. Rather, it is an invitation to be mindful of the purpose of our speech. Before speaking, we can ask ourselves, is this useful? Is this kind? Is this the right time? Is this conversation uplifting us? Or is it draining our energy? Is it creating connection? Or is it just creating more noise in an already noisy world? This practice helps us to value our own words and the attention of others. It naturally leads to an appreciation for its powerful counterpart, noble silence. This is not the awkward silence of disconnection, but the rich restorative silence of mindful presence. a silence in which we can truly listen. There is a wonderful story from ancient Greece about the philosopher Socrates that provides a practical guide for all four aspects of right speech. One day, an acquaintance ran up to him excitedly and said, "Socrates, do you know what I just heard about one of your friends?" "Hold on a minute," Socrates replied. "Before you talk to me about my friend, it might be a good idea to take a moment and filter what you're going to say. I call it the test of the three sieves." "Three sieves?" the man asked. "Yes," Socrates continued. "The first sieve is the sieve of truth. Have you made absolutely sure that what you are about to tell me is true?" The man shook his head. "No, I actually just heard about it, and—" "All right," said Socrates. "So you don't really know if it's true or not. Now let's try the second sieve, the sieve of goodness. Is what you are about to tell me about my friend something good?" "No, on the contrary." "So," Socrates continued, "you want to tell me something bad about him, but you're not certain it's true. You may still pass the test, though, because there's one sieve left, the sieve of usefulness. Is what you want to tell me about my friend going to be useful to me?" "No, not really," the man admitted. "Well," concluded Socrates, "if what you want to tell me is neither true, nor good, nor even useful, why tell it to me at all?" This simple story is a profound teaching. It offers us a mindful pause, a moment of reflection before our words leave our lips and enter the world. Our speech is the primary bridge between our inner world and the outer world. With right speech, we commit to building bridges of truth, harmony, and kindness, rather than walls of falsehood, discord, and cruelty. When our mind has been oriented by right view and our heart has been softened by right intention, our words naturally begin to flow with more grace and wisdom. And as our speech becomes more skillful, it paves the way for the next great arena of our practice, the final pillar of ethical conduct, how we manifest our inner state through the world of our physical deeds, through right action. As the clarity of our intention finds its first voice in our words, it seeks its final and most tangible form in our deeds. Our actions are our intentions made solid. They are the undeniable evidence of what we truly value, the way we sculpt the world and our own character, moment by moment. To move from right speech to right action, or samakamanta, is to bring the practice of awakening into the full spectrum of our physical existence. It is the fourth factor of the Noble Path and the second pillar of ethical conduct. It asks us to consider a profound question. Is my physical presence in this world a source of safety and peace, or is it a source of harm and distress? The Buddhist understanding of action is intrinsically linked to the concept of kama, or karma in Sanskrit. This word has often been misunderstood in the West as a kind of cosmic justice system, a ledger of good and bad deeds kept by an unseen scorekeeper. The reality is far more simple and far more profound. Karma is simply the natural law of cause and effect applied to our volitional actions. It is not a punishment or a reward, but a natural consequence. An action, or karma, is not just the physical movement. It is the entire complex of the intention that drives it, the action itself, and the result it produces. Actions born of wholesome intentions of kindness, generosity, and clarity naturally lead to wholesome results, to states of peace, happiness, and well-being for both ourselves and others. Actions born of unwholesome intentions of greed, hatred, and delusion naturally lead to unwholesome results, to states of suffering, conflict, and agitation. Right action is the art of consciously choosing to perform actions that create the causes for peace and happiness, and to refrain from actions that create the causes for suffering. It is the practice of becoming a skillful farmer of our own destiny, planting only the seeds we wish to see grow. The framework for this practice is traditionally given in the form of the 5 precepts, or training rules. These are not divine commandments to be followed out of fear, but rather powerful, practical guidelines that we voluntarily adopt to protect ourselves and others. They are expressions of a compassionate and wise heart. The first 3 of these precepts form the core definition of right action. The first, and most fundamental, is the commitment to abstain from taking life. This is a deep reverence for life in all its forms, from the smallest insect to our fellow human beings. It is not merely about refraining from the act of killing. It is about the inner cultivation of a non-violent heart. It is the intention to be a force for protection, not a threat. In a world filled with aggression and violence, the one who practices this precept becomes a sanctuary. Their presence is a refuge. This training softens the mind, eroding the roots of anger and cruelty. It reminds us that every living being shares the same fundamental wish we do, to live and to avoid suffering. By honoring this wish in others, we create a profound sense of peace within ourselves, free from the heavy burden of remorse that comes from having caused irreparable harm. The second aspect of right action is to abstain from taking what is not given. This precept against stealing extends far beyond the act of shoplifting or burglary. It is a profound commitment to honesty and integrity in all our dealings. It means not exploiting others in business, not cheating on our taxes, not misusing our employer's time or resources. It's about respecting the boundaries, property, and efforts of other people. At its core, it is a practice of contentment. The mind that is always looking for something to take is a mind that is agitated and never satisfied. It is a mind that lives in a state of lack. The mind that practices this precept cultivates generosity and trust. It finds joy in what it has and in what it can offer, rather than in what it can acquire. By refraining from taking what is not freely offered, we build a character of unimpeachable integrity, and our relationships become grounded in mutual respect and trust. The third aspect is to abstain from sexual misconduct. This precept is not a condemnation of sexuality, but an invitation to bring mindfulness, kindness, and responsibility into this powerful area of our lives. Sexual misconduct is defined as any sexual act that causes harm to oneself or others. This includes any form of exploitation or coercion where another person is treated as an object for our gratification. It includes infidelity, which breaks the bonds of trust and causes immense emotional pain. It is about ensuring that our sexual expression is rooted in honesty, mutual consent, and a genuine care for the well-being of the other person. It asks us to be mindful of the potential consequences of our actions, to be honest with our partners, and to treat them with the full dignity they deserve as complex human beings. By bringing this awareness into our intimate lives, we avoid creating a wake of emotional devastation and instead cultivate relationships that are based on genuine connection and respect. These three precepts against killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct form the heart of right action. They are supported by the other two precepts: against false speech, which we have already explored, and against the use of intoxicants that cloud the mind. This fifth precept is crucial because it protects the very foundation of our practice, mindfulness. The goal of the path is to develop clarity, to see reality as it is. Consuming substances that deliberately create heedlessness and confusion is to walk in the opposite direction. It is like hiring a guide to lead you out of the forest and then putting on a blindfold. Perhaps the most dramatic illustration of the transformative power of right action can be found in the ancient story of Angulimala. Angulimala was a fearsome bandit who lived in the time of the Buddha. Misguided by a malevolent teacher, he had taken a vow to slay 1,000 people, and as proof of his kills, he would cut off a finger from each victim and wear it as a gruesome garland around his neck. His name, Angulimala, literally meant finger necklace. He was the embodiment of terror and wrong action, and entire villages were abandoned for fear of him. One day, the Buddha, seeing with his enlightened eye that Angulimala had the potential for awakening, calmly set off to walk through the forest where the bandit lived. Angulimala saw him and was delighted, thinking, "At last, I only need one more finger to complete my 1,000. He drew his sword and began to run after the Buddha. But a strange thing happened. Though the Buddha was only walking at a normal pace, Angulimala could not catch up to him, no matter how fast he ran. Exhausted and bewildered, he shouted from a distance, "Stop, monk, stop!" The Buddha, without turning, replied in a clear, calm voice, "I have stopped, Angulimala. It is you who have not stopped." This enigmatic statement shattered Angulimala's reality. He asked the Buddha what he meant. The Buddha explained, "I have stopped forever from harming living beings. I have laid down the sword, but you have not stopped. You are still caught in the endless, violent cycle of causing suffering." In that moment, the full weight of his horrific actions crashed down upon Angulimala. The simple truth of the Buddha's words cut through his delusion like a thunderbolt. He threw down his sword, fell to his knees before the Buddha, and begged to be accepted as a monk. Despite his horrifying past, the Buddha accepted him. Angulimala dedicated himself to the path with ferocious intensity. He practiced right action, right mindfulness, and all the other factors of the path. And through his sincere practice, the man who was once a symbol of terror cleansed his mind of all defilements and became a fully enlightened being, an arhat. finding a peace he had never known was possible. His story is the ultimate testament that our past does not have to define us. No matter how skillful our past actions have been, the path of transformation is always available, beginning with the commitment, right now, to a single, wholesome deed. Right action, then, is about making our physical presence in the world a source of peace. It is the conscious choice to sow seeds of kindness, respect, and non-harming with every deed. When our actions are aligned with our wisest intentions and our kindest speech, our lives gain a beautiful and powerful integrity. This naturally leads us to consider the largest single activity to which we dedicate our actions, our work. How can we ensure that the way we earn our living is also in harmony with this path of non-harming? This brings us to the final pillar of ethical conduct, right livelihood. For most of us in the modern world, there is no single activity that consumes more of our time, energy, and life force than our work. From the moment we enter adulthood, we spend tens of thousands of hours engaged in our profession, shaping our identity and our impact on the world through the tasks we perform day in and day out. Because work occupies such a vast and central part of our existence, the spiritual path would be incomplete if it did not address it directly. It is simply not possible to live a divided life, to be a compassionate, mindful person in our private hours while engaging in work that is harmful or unethical from 9 to 5. The integrity of the path requires that it permeate every aspect of our being, and our livelihood is no exception. This is the purpose of right livelihood, or Sama Ajiva. It is the fifth factor of the Noble Eightfold Path, and the third and final pillar of the training in ethical conduct, bringing the principles of right speech and right action into the professional sphere. Right livelihood is the challenge to integrate our deepest values with our economic life. It asks us to earn our living in a manner that is honorable, honest, and, at a minimum, does not cause harm to ourselves or to other living beings. It directly confronts the common tendency to see our work as something separate from our real life, a means to an end that justifies any ethical compromises we might have to make along the way. Right livelihood teaches that there is no separation. Our work is our life. It is a primary field in which our character is tested and forged. As such, it can either be a source of stress, conflict, and moral compromise, or it can be a powerful and noble expression of our spiritual practice. The Buddha gave clear guidelines on the types of professions that constitute wrong livelihood based on the fundamental principle of non-harming. He named 5 specific trades that should be avoided because they are intrinsically built upon causing suffering. The first is dealing in weapons, for this trade profits directly from the instruments of violence and death. The second is dealing in human beings, which includes slavery, trafficking, and any form of exploitation that commodifies human life. The third is the business of meat, specifically the raising and slaughtering of animals, as it is directly involved in the taking of life, a violation of the first precept. The fourth is dealing in poisons, profiting from substances designed to kill and destroy. And the fifth is dealing in intoxicants, which profits from selling substances that lead to heedlessness, confusion, and the loss of the very mindfulness we are trying to cultivate. For many of us, our jobs may not fall into these specific categories. This does not mean we are automatically practicing right livelihood. These 5 trades are merely the most obvious examples of a deeper principle. The real inquiry for the modern practitioner is to look at the effects of our work. Does my job require me to lie or deceive? Does it contribute to the destruction of the environment? Does it prey on the addictions or insecurities of others? Does it create more division and conflict in the world? Does it treat people as mere cogs in a machine? These are not easy questions, and the answers are often not black and white. But the willingness to ask them honestly is the beginning of right livelihood. It is the beginning of taking full responsibility for our impact on the web of life. However, right livelihood is about much more than just what we do. For most of us, the most potent practice lies in how we do what we do. It is possible to work in a noble profession like teaching or healing, but to do so with a heart full of greed, arrogance, and impatience. It is also possible to work in a very humble profession like cleaning floors or collecting garbage, and to do so with immense dignity, mindfulness, and a spirit of service. The how is where we find our power. We can bring the qualities of the path into any job. We can practice honesty and integrity, refusing to cut corners or cheat a customer. We can practice diligence, doing our work to the best of our ability, not out of fear, but out of self-respect. We can practice kindness, treating our colleagues, clients, and competitors with courtesy and humanity, applying the principles of right speech in every interaction. And most importantly, we can practice mindfulness, bringing our full, non-judgmental attention to the task at hand. Consider the tale of two carpenters, both given the same task of building a chair. The first carpenter sees the job as a chore. His mind is agitated, thinking about the money he will earn, the weekend that is coming, the argument he had this morning. He works quickly and carelessly. He measures once, cuts twice. He uses a cheaper nail where a stronger screw is needed. He sands the visible surfaces, but leaves the hidden parts rough and unfinished. The chair, when completed, looks like a chair, but it is weak. It is a product of distraction and impatience. His work is just a means to an end. The second carpenter embodies right livelihood. He approaches the wood with respect, feeling its grain and its texture. He calms his mind and brings his full attention to the present moment. Each measurement is precise. Each cut is clean. His mind is not in the future or the past. It is right here, with the saw, the wood, the feeling of the tool in his hand. He works with a quiet, focused energy. He takes pride in making every joint strong and every surface smooth, even the parts no one will ever see. For him, building the chair is not a chore, it is a meditation. It is an expression of his integrity, his skill, and his care. The chair he builds is not just a piece of furniture, it is a testament to mindfulness. It is strong, beautiful, and imbued with the wholesome energy of its creator. We can all choose to be the second carpenter, regardless of our profession. Whether we are writing code, preparing a meal, driving a bus, or performing surgery, we can choose to bring this quality of mindful presence and integrity to our work. We can transform our desk, our kitchen, or our workshop into a place of practice. This attitude challenges the pervasive modern mentality of work as a soulless grind, something to be endured simply to pay the bills and to fund our real life on the weekends. Right livelihood suggests that our work can be our real life. It can be a place where we find purpose, express our values, and contribute to the world in a meaningful way. It is about bridging the painful gap we often feel between our paycheck and our purpose. It is about understanding that any work done with a spirit of mindfulness and service can be sacred. With right livelihood, we complete the training in ethical conduct. Right speech, right action, and right livelihood together create a life of outward integrity. They create a foundation of peace and self-respect, a life free from the agitation of guilt and remorse. When our external life is in order, when we are no longer at war with the world or with our own conscience, we create the perfect conditions for the deeper inner work to truly flourish. We have built and cleaned the house of our outer life. Now, we can turn our full attention to polishing the inner mirrors, to training the mind itself. This brings us to the next great division of the path, the training in mental discipline, and to the vital energy that fuels this inner work, the practice of right effort. With the foundation of an ethical life firmly established, our outer world begins to settle into a state of relative peace. A life guided by right speech, right action, and right livelihood is a life with less conflict, less remorse, and less agitation. This external tranquility creates the ideal conditions for the next stage of the journey, the deep inner work of training the mind. This brings us to the second great division of the path, mental discipline, or samadhi. But this inner transformation is not a passive process. It does not happen by itself. It requires energy, commitment, and perseverance. The nature of this energy is described in the sixth factor of the path, right effort. The very word effort can be misleading for us. We often associate it with strain, with tense, forceful striving, with gritting our teeth and pushing against resistance. But this is the kind of effort that belongs to the over-tightened side our string-it, is anxious, unsustainable, and ultimately leads to snapping. Right effort, or samavayama, is of a different quality altogether. It is a wise, balanced, and joyful application of energy. It is not the violent, short-lived explosion of a firework, but the steady, warm, and persistent glow of a lamp that illuminates the way. It is the cheerful energy of someone who delights in what is wholesome and takes a quiet pleasure in cultivating the garden of their mind. This skillful energy is directed in 4 specific ways. The first is the effort to prevent the arising of unwholesome states. This is the proactive, preventative medicine of the mind. It is the wisdom of the skillful gardener who, knowing his garden is prone to certain pests, builds a fence to keep them out. We practice this by what is known as guarding the sense doors. Our eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind are the gates through which the world enters our awareness. If we know that scrolling through certain social media feeds inevitably triggers feelings of envy and inadequacy, the effort of prevention means mindfully choosing not to expose ourselves to that trigger or to engage with it in a very limited and conscious way. If we know that engaging in political arguments online always leaves us feeling angry and agitated, the effort of prevention is to wisely step back from those conversations. This is not suppression or avoidance in a fearful sense. It is a skillful and compassionate conservation of our mental energy, choosing not to invite toxic guests into the home of our mind. The second is the effort to abandon unwholesome states that have already arisen. Despite our best efforts to guard the gates, the weeds will still appear. A thought of anger flashes in the mind. A wave of greed washes over us. A cloud of jealousy darkens our heart. What do we do now? The unskillful approach is either to indulge the state, feeding it and letting it take over, or to violently suppress it, trying to force it out of existence. Both approaches strengthen the weed. Right effort offers a middle way. It is the work of the gardener who sees a weed, and without anger or drama, calmly and persistently removes it. When anger arises, we first acknowledge it mindfully. Anger is present. We see it for what it is, an impersonal, unpleasant energy. Then, we gently apply an antidote. We might introduce a thought of loving kindness for ourselves and for the person who is the object of our anger. We might reflect on the impermanent nature of the feeling, or we might simply let it go by returning our full attention to the physical sensation of the breath. We are not fighting the darkness, we are simply turning on a light. The third is the effort to develop wholesome states that have not yet arisen. The skillful gardener does not merely pull weeds, they actively plant flowers. This is the joyful and creative aspect of right effort. It is the conscious decision to cultivate the beautiful, positive qualities of the mind, such as kindness, compassion, generosity, gratitude, and concentration. These states do not always arise spontaneously. They need to be deliberately nurtured. This is why we set aside time for formal meditation practices. We sit to practice metta, or loving kindness meditation, actively planting the seeds of goodwill in our heart. We take a gratitude walk, consciously looking for things to appreciate. We read inspiring texts or listen to teachings that uplift the mind. We are actively creating the causes and conditions for these beautiful states to arise, enriching the soil of our mind and making it a more hospitable place for goodness to grow. The fourth and final aspect is the effort to maintain the wholesome states that have already arisen. When the flowers begin to bloom, the gardener's work is not done. They must continue to water them, give them sunlight, and protect them so they can flourish. Similarly, when a moment of peace, joy, or compassion arises in our mind, it is easy to let it pass by unnoticed, taking it for granted. The effort of maintenance is to learn to savor these moments. When you feel a genuine sense of gratitude, pause for a moment. Really feel it in your body. Appreciate the feeling itself. When you experience a moment of deep calm and meditation, don't rush on to the next thing. Rest in that calm. By giving our attention and appreciation to these wholesome states, we strengthen them. We make their neural pathways more robust, making it more likely that they will arise again in the future. We are watering the flowers, ensuring our garden becomes more and more beautiful over time. The quality of this fourfold effort is perfectly captured in the timeless fable of the tortoise and the hare. The hare is a creature of wrong effort. He is incredibly fast, capable of brilliant bursts of speed, but he is arrogant, inconsistent, and easily distracted. He runs ahead, and then, confident in his own ability, he gets sidetracked and takes a nap. This is the spiritual practitioner who goes on an intense retreat, feels they have made a huge breakthrough, and then comes home and drops the practice entirely, believing they have already made it. Their effort is dramatic but unsustainable. The tortoise, on the other hand, is the embodiment of right effort. He is slow, steady, and utterly unimpressive. He is not capable of dazzling sprints, but he has one supreme quality: persistence. He puts one foot in front of the other, step by plodding step, his eyes fixed on the goal. He does not get distracted. He does not get discouraged. He just keeps going. And in the end, it is his steady, consistent, unwavering effort that wins the race. This is the spirit of right effort. It is the wisdom that understands that a little bit of practice done every single day is infinitely more powerful than heroic efforts performed sporadically. It is the quiet commitment to just keep showing up, to keep pulling one weed, planting one seed and taking one more mindful step on the path. This balanced energy of the tortoise, this middle way of effort that avoids both the tense anxiety of the hare and the complacency of laziness, is the engine that drives our inner development. It is the power source for our meditation. But this energy is not just applied randomly or aimlessly. It is skillfully directed toward a specific purpose, to unify and stabilize the mind, to gather its scattered forces, and to bring it to a state of calm, collected clarity. This sustained and wise application of energy leads us directly to the peak of the training in mental discipline, the eighth and final factor of the path, the profound practice of right concentration. The diligent, joyful energy of right effort is not without a purpose. It is the steady hand that guides a thread through the eye of a needle. The thread is our awareness, and the eye of the needle is a single point of focus. To bring the mind to this state of unwavering, unified attention is the practice of right concentration, or samadhi. This is the eighth and final factor of the Noble Eightfold Path, the pinnacle of the training in mental discipline. It is the fruit that ripens on the tree of a life lived ethically, a mind energized by wise effort, and an awareness stabilized by mindfulness. It is here, in the profound stillness of the concentrated mind, that the deepest transformations become possible. Samadhi is a word that means to collect, or to bring together. It describes a mind that is no longer fragmented and scattered, no longer a victim of the endless chatter and distraction that characterizes our normal waking state. The unconcentrated mind is like a wild monkey, crashing through the forest canopy, leaping impulsively from one branch of thought to another, from a memory of the past to an anxiety about the future, from a flicker of desire to a surge of irritation, never resting, never still. In contrast, the concentrated mind has gathered all of its dispersed energy. It is collected, unified, and stable. It rests with calm and luminous clarity upon a single object of attention. This state of profound collectedness is most systematically trained through the practice of formal meditation. In mindfulness of breathing, for instance, the breath becomes the anchor, the single point to which we return again and again. The instruction is deceptively simple. Remain aware of the sensation of the breath flowing in and the breath flowing out. Inevitably, the monkey mind will leap away. A sound is heard, a thought arises, a plan is made. The practice is not to scold the mind for wandering, but to gently, firmly, and patiently bring it back to the breath. Each time we do this, we are performing a rep in a mental workout. We are strengthening the muscle of attention. Repeated thousands upon thousands of times, this simple act of returning builds an incredible inner strength, an ability for the mind to remain steady and unshaken amidst the currents of life. As our ability to concentrate deepens, something remarkable begins to happen. The mental chatter that normally forms the constant background noise of our lives starts to subside. The 5 great hindrances to inner peace essential desire, ill will, sluggishness, restlessness, and doubt begin to recede. It is as if we are in a noisy room, and one by one, the sources of the disruptive noise are switched off. In the growing silence, a new kind of happiness begins to emerge. This is not the familiar, agitated happiness that comes from getting something we want. It is a deep, non-sensual joy and contentment, a feeling of profound well-being that is born not from acquisition, but from release. This is a pivotal discovery on the path to realize that there is a source of profound happiness available within us, independent of external conditions, is to begin the process of liberating ourselves from our addiction to the fleeting and unreliable pleasures of the world. As concentration deepens further still, even this joyful feeling subsides, replaced by a state of sublime and unshakable equanimity. Here, the mind is perfectly balanced, utterly still, yet intensely awake and luminous. The traditional metaphor for this process is that of a lake. Our ordinary, distracted mind is like a lake whipped up by strong winds. The surface is choppy and turbulent. The water is churned up, full of mud and sediment. It is impossible to see the bottom of the lake, and the reflection of the sky on its surface is fragmented and distorted. This is our normal state, where the winds of desire and aversion constantly agitate the mind, and the mud of our confusion prevents us from seeing anything clearly. Through the practice of concentration, the winds of distracting thoughts begin to die down. As the mind grows still, the sediment of the hindrances slowly settles. The water becomes progressively clearer and calmer. In a state of deep concentration, the lake of the mind is perfectly still, without a single ripple. The water is crystal clear. Now, We can see all the way to the bottom, and the surface reflects the moon and the stars of reality perfectly without any distortion. Another powerful metaphor illustrates the immense power of a concentrated mind. Think of the light of the sun. On an ordinary day, the sun's rays are diffuse. They spread out over a wide area. They provide warmth and light, but their energy is scattered. You can stand in this scattered sunlight all day and nothing will happen. This is like the ordinary, unconcentrated mind. Its energy is spread thin across 1,000 different thoughts and concerns. It is too weak to penetrate the surface of reality. Right concentration is like a magnifying glass. When you hold a magnifying glass in the sunlight, it gathers the diffuse rays and focuses them onto a single, tiny, brilliant point. At that point, the sun's energy is so concentrated, so powerful, that it can set a piece of paper on fire. The concentrated mind has the same power. It gathers all the scattered energy of our awareness and focuses it with such pinpoint precision that it can burn away the thick layers of illusion and ignorance that obscure the truth. It is this focused power that allows for the arising of liberative insight. This last point is crucial. Right concentration, as beautiful and blissful as it can be, is not the final goal of the path. It is possible to become addicted to the peaceful states of concentration, using them as a temporary escape from the difficulties of life. The Buddha was very clear that samadhi is a tool, not an end in itself. It is the creation of a perfect mental instrument. Once we have forged and sharpened this tool, we must then use it, and its purpose is to facilitate vipassana, or clear-seeing insight. With a mind that is stable, clear, powerful, and still, we can turn our focused attention towards the investigation of reality itself. We can look deeply at our own experience and see, with undeniable clarity, the truth of impermanence. We can see the subtle nature of unsatisfactoriness. We can pierce through the illusion of a solid, separate self. The steadiness of the concentrated mind allows us to look at these profound and sometimes unsettling truths without being overwhelmed, allowing wisdom to blossom. With right concentration, our tour of the Noble Eightfold Path is complete. It is a perfect system for human liberation. We begin with wisdom right view and right intention to ensure we have a correct map and a wholesome motivation. We build a foundation of outward integrity through ethical conduct, right speech, right action, and right livelihood so that our life in the world is peaceful. And we undertake the inner training of mental discipline powered by right effort, guided by right mindfulness, and culminating in the profound power of right concentration. But the path is not merely a technical manual for the mind, it is also a path of the heart. With a mind now made capable of extraordinary clarity and stillness, what is the highest emotion we can cultivate within it? The wisdom of the path suggests that we can fill this prepared mind with a boundless and unconditional love. This brings us to the cultivation of the four sublime states of the heart, beginning with the radiant warmth of metta, or loving kindness, the practice of dissolving into emptiness, of resting in the boundless space of awareness, is not merely a strategy for navigating the dark hours of the night. Its true power, its most profound gift, reveals itself in the light of the following day. We must explore this because the peace we cultivate in the stillness of 3 a.m. is not meant to be abandoned when the alarm clock rings. It is meant to be carried with us, to be woven into the very fabric of our waking lives. Think for a moment of the old way of waking. For many of us, it was a jolt, a sudden, violent plunge from the disorienting fog of restless sleep directly into a sea of obligations. The first conscious thought was often not one of peace, but of panic, the mental checklist of tasks, the replay of yesterday's frustrations, the dread of an upcoming challenge. The body would follow the mind's lead, tensing up before your feet even touched the floor. The shoulders would tighten, the jaw would clench, the breath would become shallow. You were already at war with the day before it had truly begun. This is the experience of waking up from a mind that has spent the night wrestling with itself, a mind that has clenched its fist around its worries and refused to let go. But after a night of practice, a night of consciously meeting anxiety with space, of allowing thoughts to be clouds in a vast sky, the morning feels different. The light filtering through the window might be the same, the sound of the world outside might be familiar, but the internal landscape has shifted. There is a sense of lightness, of quiet, spaciousness. It is not necessarily a feeling of ecstatic joy or forced positivity, but something far more subtle and sustainable. It is the absence of weight. The usual anxieties may still make their appearance. The thought of that difficult email you have to send might still arise, but it no longer has the same gravitational pull. It doesn't immediately hijack your nervous system. It feels less solid, less threatening, more transparent. You have spent the night learning that you are the sky, not the cloud. And so, when you wake, you remember this truth. The cloud is there, but it is floating in a vast open expanse. It no longer defines the entire horizon. This feeling of lightness is the direct result of non-resistance. The mind, instead of spending 8 hours in a tense struggle, has been allowed to rest in its natural state, which is open and aware. It's like the difference between sleeping with your fists clenched all night and sleeping with open palms. In the first case, you wake up sore, tired, and carrying the tension in your very muscles. In the second, you wake up relaxed, open, and ready to receive the day rather than fight it. This initial state of being sets the tone for everything that follows. The lightness you feel is a buffer, a cushion of peace that you carry with you out of the bedroom and into the world. It fundamentally changes your relationship with reactivity. Reactivity is the chain reaction of suffering. A trigger happens, an emotion flares, and an unconscious action follows. There is no space, no pause, no moment of choice. But the practice of resting in emptiness creates that space. It inserts a sacred pause between stimulus and response, and in that pause lies your freedom. Let us make this concrete. Consider the daily commute, a common source of stress and frustration for so many. In the old way of being, the commute was a battle. You are sitting in traffic, late for an important meeting. A car cuts you off abruptly. The immediate, unconscious reaction is a surge of adrenaline. The heart rate quickens, the hands grip the steering wheel, a curse forms on your lips. You might lay on the horn, your face flushed with anger. In that moment, you are not a person experiencing anger. You are the anger. You have completely identified with the emotion. It owns you. The rest of your drive is colored by this event. Your nervous system is on high alert, and you arrive at your destination agitated, stressed, and depleted. This is a perfect example of a life lived without inner space. Now, let us imagine the same scenario after you have begun to practice. You are in the same traffic jam, late for the same meeting. The same car cuts you off in the same reckless way. The initial flash of energy still happens. The body still registers the event. A familiar heat might rise in your chest. But this time, something is different. Because you have trained your mind to be spacious, you are not immediately swept away. You notice the anger as it arises. You feel it as a physical sensation, a tightening in the stomach, a quickening of the breath, but you are able to observe it without becoming it. You are the sky, noticing a thunderclap. The sound is loud, but it doesn't break the sky. In that moment of noticing, a choice becomes available. Instead of being a puppet of the anger, you are the conscious witness of it. You can feel your hands gripping the wheel and consciously choose to relax them. You can feel your breath becoming shallow and consciously choose to take a slow, deep breath. You can even send a thought of compassion towards the other driver, not because they deserve it, but because you deserve peace. You realize their frantic driving is likely a sign of their own suffering, their own inner chaos. This doesn't excuse their behavior, but it frees you from being its victim. You arrive at your meeting, not blissfully unaffected, but centered. You have met a challenge with awareness rather than reactivity. You have responded, not reacted. This is the practice in action. This is the gift of the night brought into the day. This ability to bring space into difficult moments extends far beyond the morning commute. It touches every corner of your life. At work, when a colleague makes a critical comment, you can pause. You can feel the sting of defensiveness arise. See it for what it is, the ego's cry of alarm, and choose to respond with curiosity and grace rather than a sharp retort. In your relationships, when a loved one says something that hurts you, you can hold that hurt in a compassionate space instead of immediately lashing out and escalating a conflict. You become a better listener because you are no longer just waiting for your turn to speak, to defend your position. You can offer the other person the gift of your spacious, non-judgmental attention, creating a space for genuine connection. You begin to see that every moment of friction in your day is not a problem to be solved, but an invitation to practice. Waiting in a long line at the store is an opportunity to practice patience and notice the world around you. A technological glitch on your computer is a chance to practice meeting frustration with breath. Even the most mundane tasks, like washing the dishes, can become a form of meditation. You feel the warmth of the water, see the shimmering of the bubbles, hear the clink of the plates. You are fully present, You are bringing the sanctuary of your nighttime practice into the flow of ordinary life. You are discovering that peace is not something that only happens in a quiet room with your eyes closed. It is a way of being that is available in every moment, no matter how chaotic it may seem. The night is the training ground, but the day is the main event. You are learning to live with an open mind and a soft heart, to navigate the inevitable challenges of life, not with a hardened shell of resistance, but with the boundless resilience of open space. And as this inner space, this feeling of inner sufficiency begins to grow, something remarkable happens. The frantic search for fulfillment in the world outside begins to quiet down. The desperate need to acquire, to achieve, to distract, starts to lose its power. The hole inside that you once tried to fill with external things no longer feels so empty. This leads us directly to confront one of the greatest illusions of the modern world and one of the greatest obstacles to our peace, the promise of materialism. The inner space we cultivate is a sanctuary, a quiet harbor from the storms of the mind. As this feeling of inner sufficiency grows, it naturally loosens the grip of the world outside. We begin to feel a contentment that is not dependent on circumstances. And this leads us to question one of the most pervasive and powerful myths of our time, a myth that has become the unspoken religion of the modern world. This is the myth of materialism. It is the deep, often unconscious belief that our inner state of being, our happiness, our sense of self-worth can be purchased, assembled, and upgraded like any other consumer product. This belief is whispered to us from billboards, shouted from television screens, and curated into perfect images on our social media feeds. It tells a simple, seductive story. You are incomplete. You are lacking. But do not worry, because the solution is for sale. Happiness is just one purchase away. This next car will make you feel powerful. This new phone will make you feel connected. This designer handbag will make you feel seen. This larger house will finally make you feel secure. We must look at this promise directly, without judgment, but with the clear, unwavering light of awareness. The problem, you see, is not with the things themselves. A house is shelter, a car is transportation, a phone is a tool for communication. There is no inherent evil in these objects. The source of our suffering arises from the impossible demands we place upon them. We ask a collection of metal, plastic, and glass to heal a wound in our soul. We ask a brand name stitched onto fabric to grant us the self-love we have not cultivated within. We ask a number in a bank account to quiet the fundamental anxiety of being human. We have been taught to seek spiritual solutions in the marketplace, and this is a path doomed to failure. It is like trying to quench a deep thirst by drinking salt water. The more you drink, the thirstier you become. The initial promise of relief quickly gives way to a deeper, more painful craving. This is the endless, exhausting cycle of materialism. It is a treadmill, and the button to increase the speed is always within reach, while the stop button seems to have disappeared entirely. The first noble truth of this reality is the law of impermanence, or anicca. Every single thing in the material world is subject to change, decay, and dissolution. Nothing lasts. The shiny new car will inevitably get its first scratch, its engine will wear down, and it will eventually become rust. The cutting-edge smartphone will be slow and obsolete within a few years. The beautiful clothes will fade and tear. Our own bodies, which we often treat as our most prized possession, are in a constant state of flux, aging and changing with every passing moment. To build the foundation of our happiness on things that are by their very nature unstable and transient is to build our house on quicksand. It is a guarantee of future suffering. We become trapped in a state of perpetual anxiety, trying to protect what cannot be protected, trying to hold on to what cannot be held. We are fighting a battle against the fundamental nature of reality itself, and this is a battle that can never be won. Seeing this is not pessimism, it is a radical act of realism. It is daring to look at the world as it actually is, not as the advertisements tell us it should be. The freedom begins when we stop fighting this universal law and learn to flow with it. To understand the psychological mechanism of materialism, we can look to the Buddhist image of the hungry ghost. This is a being with a massive, distended belly representing an insatiable hunger, but with a throat as thin as a needle so that it can never consume enough to feel full. It is a tragic figure, perpetually craving, perpetually unsatisfied. Is this not a perfect metaphor for the consumer mindset? We are encouraged to cultivate a limitless hunger, while the satisfaction we get from feeding it is impossibly small and fleeting. This brings us to a simple story. A man was starving. He hadn't eaten in days, and he felt a deep, aching emptiness inside him. He believed with all his heart that happiness was a full stomach. He managed to get a loaf of bread. He tore into it, eating ravenously. For a moment, there was pleasure, a relief from the sharpest pangs of hunger. But when the loaf was gone, the deep, aching emptiness remained. So, he thought, the first loaf was not enough. I need another. He got a second loaf and ate it. Again, a moment of pleasure, but the fundamental craving was still there. He did this again with a third, a fourth, and a fifth loaf. With each one, the initial thrill was a little less potent, the relief a little more muted. Finally, he got a sixth loaf of bread. He ate it slowly, and as he finished the last bite, a profound sense of satisfaction washed over him. The ache was gone. He felt full. He was at last content. He leaned back, looked at the 5 empty wrappers scattered around him, and sighed with regret. What a fool I have been, he said to himself. I wasted all that time and money on the first 5 loaves. If only I had known, I would have skipped them and eaten only the 6th loaf. That 6th one was the magic one that finally worked. We are this man. We chase the next promotion, the next relationship, the next vacation, the next online purchase, convinced that this one will be the 6th loaf of bread. We believe the happiness is located in the object of our desire. But the story reveals the profound delusion in this way of thinking. The satisfaction did not come from the 6th loaf of bread. The 6th loaf was not magical. The satisfaction arose simply because it was the point at which his inner condition of hunger was finally met. The happiness was not in the object acquired, it was in the cessation of craving. We mistakenly credit the last thing we bought for the feeling of relief, and so we perpetuate the cycle, always looking for the next 6th loaf. But the truth is, we are just feeding a hungry ghost. The real solution is not to find the magical final loaf, but to heal the hunger itself. This leads us to a revolutionary conclusion, one that stands in direct opposition to the entire edifice of our consumer culture. True freedom, true wealth, and true peace do not come from having more. They come from wanting less. This is not a call for a life of harsh, joyless asceticism. Zen does not ask you to live in a cave and renounce the world unless that is your path. The shift is not in your possessions, but in your relationship to them. The goal is to move from being a slave to your desires to being the master of your attention. Can you appreciate the beauty of a sunset without needing to capture it in a photo? Can you enjoy the comfort of a warm house without letting your identity be defined by its size or location? Can you use the tools of modern life without letting them use you? This is the practice. It is the practice of enjoying things for what they are, using them when necessary, caring for them while they are in your custody, and letting them go gracefully when the time comes. This is a detachment born not of cold indifference, but of profound wisdom. It is the understanding that your true worth, your true nature, is not something that can be added to or subtracted from by any material object. It is complete, whole, and untouchable, right here, right now. When you see this, the frantic chase begins to slow. The hungry ghost begins to be healed. You find that the less you need from the world, the more you are able to enjoy it. The less you are defined by what you have, the more you are free to simply be. By seeing the inherent emptiness of the material promise, we stop looking outward for our salvation. We are naturally guided to turn our gaze inward, to explore the landscape of our own heart and mind. We begin to suspect that if peace is not a destination we can purchase a ticket to, then perhaps it is something else entirely. Perhaps it is the very path we are walking on. We have seen that the relentless search for happiness in the world of material things is a path of illusion, a promise that can never be truly fulfilled. This naturally leads us to look inward, but as we do, we often carry the same fundamental error with us. We trade the pursuit of an external object for the pursuit of an external state. We treat peace itself as a new product to be acquired, a destination to be reached. This is perhaps the most subtle and resilient trap of the spiritual journey. We tell ourselves stories. I will be peaceful once I have a less stressful job. I will finally be calm when the children are grown and have left the house. I will find peace in retirement when all my work is done. We imagine peace as a tranquil, sun-drenched island at the end of a long and stormy voyage. We believe that our life's work is to battle the waves of difficulty, to conquer the storms of our own emotions, so that someday, if we are strong enough and lucky enough, we might finally wash ashore on that distant island and rest. But Zen wisdom asks us to look closely at this assumption. It asks, what if there is no island? What if peace is not a destination at all? This can sound disheartening at first, like being told the paradise you've been seeking does not exist. But it is, in fact, the most liberating news in the world. Because if peace is not a distant place you must struggle to reach, then there is only one other possibility. It must be available right here, right now, in the very heart of the life you are already living. The great misunderstanding is that peace means the absence of problems. We imagine it as a life devoid of difficulty, loss, anxiety, or pain. But a life without these things is not a human life. It is a fantasy. The truth is that peace is not the absence of the storm. It is the ability to find shelter in the middle of it. It is not the elimination of life's challenges, but a radical transformation of our relationship to them. Let us use a metaphor. Many of us think of our mind as a fragile glass vessel. We believe our well-being depends on keeping this glass safe and protected. Life, then, becomes a series of threats. Difficult emotions like anger, fear, grief, and disappointment are like stones. When they are thrown at us, or when they arise from within, our primary goal is to deflect them, to get rid of them, to deny them, lest they shatter our fragile peace. Our entire life becomes a tense effort to manage our environment and our inner world to avoid any and all stones. But this is an exhausting and impossible task. Stones will always be a part of life. The Zen approach suggests we have misidentified ourselves. You are not the fragile glass vessel. Your true nature, the awareness that is reading these words right now, is like the vast, open sky. The sky does not fight the weather. On a beautiful day, it holds the sun and the gentle white clouds. On a stormy day, it holds the dark thunderheads, the flashing lightning, and the pouring rain. The sky is not damaged by the storm. It does not try to push the storm away. It allows the rain to be rain. It allows the wind to be wind. Its own nature remains untouched, spacious, and peaceful, simply allowing the weather to pass through. Your mind in its natural state is this sky. Your thoughts and emotions are the weather. Peace is not a life of perpetual sunshine. Peace is realizing you are the sky, and you have the capacity to hold all weather, both the beautiful and the terrifying, with a sense of equanimity and boundless compassion. To make this more practical, let us consider the story of two sailors. The first is a novice. He has a new boat, and he loves the feeling of being on the water. For him, a perfect day of sailing is a day of calm seas, a clear sky, and a gentle, predictable wind. On these days, he feels happy, confident, and skilled. He believes he is a master of his craft. But one day, far from shore, the weather turns. The sky darkens, the wind begins to howl, and the waves grow into menacing mountains of water. The novice panics. He sees the storm as an enemy, a personal affront, a sign of his failure. He fights the waves, cursing them. He pulls on the ropes with frantic energy, trying to force the boat and the sea to bend to his will. His every action is driven by fear. For him, the storm is the opposite of peace, and his only goal is to escape it. Now, let us consider the master sailor. She has spent her life on the sea. She does not love storms, but she does not fear them. She respects them. She understands that the ocean, by its very nature, is unpredictable. Calm and storm are two sides of the same coin. Her skill is not in her ability to control the weather, but in her ability to work with it. When the storm comes, she does not panic. She becomes more focused, more present. She feels the rhythm of the waves, not as an enemy, but as a powerful dance partner. She knows precisely how to turn the rudder to ride up and over a towering wave. She knows how to adjust the sails to use the fierce wind to her advantage. Her confidence does not come from the external conditions of the weather. It comes from a deep, unshakable trust in her own skill, in her boat, and in her intimate understanding of the sea. Her peace is not contingent on the calmness of the water. Her peace is the steady hand on the rudder in the very heart of the storm. We are all sailors on the ocean of life. For too long we have acted like the novice, believing that peace is a life without storms. We feel like failures when illness strikes, when we lose a loved one, when we face financial hardship or emotional turmoil. We fight and resist, which only exhausts us and makes the experience more painful. Zen invites us to become the master sailor. It invites us to understand that peace is not the absence of waves. Peace is learning how to sail. It is the skill of awareness, the steady hand of the breath, the compassionate heart, that allows us to navigate the inevitable ups and downs of existence with grace, courage, and a deep sense of inner balance. So, if peace is always here, if it is the deep, silent ocean beneath the turbulent surface waves, how do we access it? The answer is beautifully, profoundly simple. We return. We practice the art of returning over and over again. The anchor that allows us to do this is the breath. Your thoughts can be lost in 1,000 anxieties about the future or 1,000 regrets about the past. But your breath is only ever happening in one moment, right now. When you find yourself caught in the storm of your mind in a stressful meeting, in a difficult conversation, in a moment of panic, you can perform the simplest and most powerful act. You can bring your attention just for a moment to the physical sensation of one single breath. Feel the air enter your nostrils, feel your chest or abdomen expand, and feel it release, in and out. That is all. In that single conscious breath, you have dropped your anchor, you have returned from the chaotic surface of thought to the quiet, stable depths of the present moment. You have touched the peace that is always available beneath the noise. It is not about stopping your thoughts or silencing the storm. It is about finding the stillness that coexists with the storm. This is a practice that is available to you 1,000 times a day. Peace is not a distant reward for a life well lived. It is the very path of living well, one conscious breath at a time. It is the way you walk, not the destination you arrive at. But intellectual understanding, however profound, is only the map. To truly become the skilled sailor, we must put this into practice. We must build the spiritual muscles of awareness and compassion through consistent, daily training. How then do we weave this practice into the very fabric of our busy lives so that it becomes not another task to complete, but as natural as breathing itself? We have arrived at a pivotal understanding. Peace is not a distant island destination. It is the skill and grace with which we navigate the unpredictable ocean of life. We are not trying to eliminate the waves of difficulty, but to become master sailors, steady and present in the heart of the storm. This is a beautiful and empowering realization, but it can also feel abstract. It is the map, but it is not the territory. A person does not learn to sail by studying charts alone. They must get in the boat. They must feel the pull of the rudder in their hands, the spray of the sea on their face, and the power of the wind in the sails. They must practice. The question then becomes profoundly practical. How do we practice? How do we build the spiritual muscles of awareness so that this way of being becomes not a momentary effort, but our new nature? The answer lies not in adding more complicated tasks to our already overflowing lives, but in transforming the very things we are already doing. The Zen path reveals that our entire life, in all its mundane glory, is the training ground. We do not need to retreat to a monastery. The monastery is right here. Let us begin with the most fundamental action of our lives, walking. From the moment we get out of bed to the moment we return, we are in motion. We walk from the bedroom to the kitchen, from the house to the car, from the parking lot to the office. And how do we typically perform this action? We are almost never there for it. We walk on autopilot. Our body moves through space, but our mind is somewhere else, entirely lost in a recurring worry, planning the next meeting, replaying a past conversation. The body is treated as a mere vehicle, a taxi service for the restless mind. Walking meditation, or mindful walking, invites us to reclaim this experience. It is not about walking in a special way, or at a snail's pace in a manicured garden, although it can be. It is simply about bringing a gentle, open awareness to the act of walking, wherever you may be. The practice is simple. As you walk, begin by bringing your attention to the physical sensations in your body. Start with your feet. Feel the solidness of the ground beneath you. Notice the subtle sequence of each step, the feeling of your heel making contact, the shifting of weight across the sole of your foot, the final push-off from your toes. You don't need to change how you walk. You only need to feel it. You can synchronize your breath with your steps, perhaps taking a few steps for each inhalation and a few for each exhalation. Let the rhythm be natural and unforced. As you walk, allow your other senses to open. Feel the air on your skin. Is it warm or cool? Is there a breeze? Listen to the sounds around you, the distant traffic, the singing of a bird, the sound of your own footsteps without labeling them as good or bad. Simply receive them as pure sensation. Your mind will wander. This is not a mistake or a failure. It is simply what minds do. When you notice your mind has drifted into thought, gently acknowledge it, and then, with kindness, guide your attention back to the feeling of your feet on the earth. Each time you do this, you are strengthening the muscle of mindfulness. You are transforming a simple walk to the mailbox into a profound act of returning to the present moment, of grounding yourself in your body and in reality. Next, consider another universal daily activity, eating. For many of us, meals have become another task to be completed as efficiently as possible. We eat while standing at the kitchen counter, while driving, while scrolling through our phones, or while watching the news. We barely taste our food. It is fuel, consumed mindlessly. Mindful eating is a powerful antidote to this modern affliction. It is a practice of gratitude, connection, and deep nourishment. Before you take the first bite, pause. Take a moment to simply look at the food on your plate. Contemplate its journey. This food was once a seed in the earth. It required sunlight, rain, and soil to grow. It required the labor of a farmer to plant and harvest it, the work of a driver to transport it, the effort of someone to prepare it. In this single plate of food is an entire universe of causes and conditions, a web of interconnection that links you to the entire planet. Allow a feeling of gratitude to arise for this incredible gift. Then, as you begin to eat, engage all of your senses. Notice the vibrant colors, the different shapes and textures. Before you put the food in your mouth, notice its aroma. When you take a bite, chew slowly. It is astonishing how rarely we actually taste our food. Can you identify the different flavors, sweet, salty, sour, bitter? Notice the texture. Finally, listen to your body. Are you truly hungry? Are you full? Mindful eating reconnects us with our body's innate wisdom. It turns the simple, biological act of eating into a rich, sensory, and spiritual experience. It is a meditation on our interdependence with all of life. Now, let us bring this awareness into our interactions with the world and with ourselves. This can be practiced through deep listening and the use of sacred pauses. When we are in conversation, most of us are not truly listening. We are hearing words while our mind is busy formulating a response, preparing a defense, or waiting for a gap so we can share our own story. Deep listening is the practice of offering another person the full, undivided attention of your presence. When you listen deeply, you are not just hearing their words, you are listening to the emotions underneath the words. You are noticing their body language, their tone of voice. You are offering them a spacious, non-judgmental container in which they can feel truly seen and heard. This is one of the greatest acts of compassion we can offer another human being, and it can transform the quality of our relationships. Perhaps the most accessible and potent practice for a busy life is the sacred pause. Consider the life of a typical office worker. Their day is a relentless cascade of emails, notifications, meetings, and deadlines. Stress builds incrementally, layer by layer, until by the end of the day, they are exhausted, irritable, and depleted. Now, imagine this person sets a silent, vibrating alarm on their watch or phone to go off every 90 minutes. When the alarm vibrates, they don't do anything dramatic. They don't announce they are meditating. They simply stop. For 30 seconds, they stop typing. They turn their gaze away from the screen and perhaps look out a window. They take one slow, conscious breath, feeling the air fill their lungs and then release. They feel the solidness of their feet on the floor. They notice the familiar tension in their shoulders and, just for a moment, they consciously soften it. Then they return to their work. This tiny act, repeated throughout the day, is revolutionary. It is a pattern interrupt. It breaks the momentum of unconscious reactivity. Each pause is a microdose of sanity, a moment of returning home to the present. The stress is not allowed to accumulate to a breaking point. It is met and released moment by moment. Over time, these sacred pauses weave a thread of mindfulness through the entire day, transforming an experience of frantic overwhelm into one of centered presence. These practices, mindful walking, mindful eating, deep listening, and sacred pauses, are the tools of the Master Sailor. They are how we learn to work with the winds and waves of our daily lives. They are not about adding new things to do, but about bringing a new quality of awareness to what we are already doing. They show us that every single moment, no matter how ordinary or challenging, is an opportunity to wake up. It is an invitation to come home to the here and now. As we commit to these simple, consistent practices, something remarkable begins to happen. We start to notice a pattern, not in the external world, but in our inner one. We see that the objects of our awareness, the sensation of a footstep, the taste of food, the sound of a voice, the content of a thought are constantly changing, constantly in flux. They arise, they exist for a moment, and they pass away. But we also begin to notice that which is aware of all this change. We begin to sense the presence of the awareness itself, a silent, stable, unchanging background against which the entire drama of life unfolds. This dawning recognition is the doorway to the final, unifying insight of our entire journey. It is the beginning of understanding who we truly are. Through the steady, patient practices of mindfulness, we begin to change not only our days, but our very sense of self. In learning to walk with presence, to eat with gratitude, and to pause with intention, we are not just accumulating peaceful moments, we are undertaking a profound investigation into the nature of our own being. And the fruit of this investigation is the most liberating realization possible. It is a fundamental shift in identity, a Copernican revolution of the soul. We begin the journey believing we are a small, fragile object at the center of our own universe, battered by the chaotic forces of life. We end it by discovering we are the universe itself, the silent, intelligent space in which all of life unfolds. This is the final integration. It is the dawning recognition that you are the sky, not the storm. To fully grasp this, let us gather the essential threads of wisdom we have explored. First, we confronted the reality of impermanence, or anicca. We saw that everything we can perceive, both internally and externally, is in a constant state of flux. Your thoughts are a flowing river, never the same for more than an instant. Your emotions are like the weather, passing clouds of joy, anger, and sadness. Your body is a dynamic process of change, not a static object. The world around you, from the mightiest mountains to the smallest cells, is continuously arising and passing away. Seeing this clearly loosens our desperate, white-knuckled grip on life. When we understand that nothing is solid and permanent, we stop trying to hold on so tightly. We learn to dance with the flow of reality instead of fighting against it. This understanding of impermanence leads directly to the second profound insight: no, self, or anatta. If everything we identify with is constantly changing, then where is the fixed, permanent me at the center of it all? We are invited to look for this self. Is it your name? That is just a label. Is it your body? It is different than it was 7 years ago. Is it your thoughts? They are fleeting and often contradictory. Is it your personality, your job, your relationships? These are all collections of habits and circumstances that shift over time. The startling conclusion is that when we look for a solid, independent self, we cannot find one. The self we believe ourselves to be is not a noun, but a verb. It is a process, a story, a pattern of activity. This is not a cause for despair. It is not the annihilation of you. It is the liberation from a tiny, constricted prison of identity. You are not a single, isolated cloud in the sky, destined to be born and then dissipate into nothing. You are something far, far greater. This brings us to the third and most subtle understanding: emptiness, or Śūnyatā. If all things are impermanent and lack a solid, separate self, then what is their true nature? Their nature is emptiness. This is perhaps the most misunderstood word in all of Buddhism. Emptiness does not mean nothingness or a dead, sterile void. Quite the opposite. It means everything is empty of a separate, independent existence. Everything is radically interconnected, a manifestation of the whole. A flower is empty of being a separate flower. It is made of non-flower elements like sunlight, water, soil, and air. Your sense of self is empty of being a separate self. It is made of non-self elements like your parents, your culture, the food you've eaten, and the ideas you've encountered. Emptiness, then, is not a lack. It is pure, boundless potentiality. It is the open, luminous, creative space from which all forms arise and to which they return. It is the nature of the sky itself, which allows all clouds, all weather, all storms to happen. It is the freedom at the heart of reality. To bring this from the philosophical to the personal, let us embrace one of the most powerful metaphors for this journey: the ocean and the wave. For most of our lives, we experience ourselves as a single, separate wave. We are born out of the depths of the ocean, we rise up, and we take on a unique form. We look around and see other waves. Some are bigger, and we feel envy or ambition. Some are smaller, and we feel pride or condescension. Our entire life is consumed by the drama of being this wave. We strive to become the biggest, most impressive wave we can be. And we live in a state of constant, underlying terror, because in the distance we see the shoreline. We see wave after wave ahead of us reach that shore, crash, and disappear into foam. And we believe with absolute certainty that this will be our fate. We believe that our existence is a brief, desperate struggle that will end in our complete annihilation. This is the perspective of the ego, the separate self. The spiritual awakening, the great liberation, is the moment when the wave, in the midst of its rising and falling, has a profound insight. It realizes, I am not just a wave, I am the ocean. In that instant, everything changes. The fear of the shoreline vanishes. How can the ocean be afraid of its own shore? The crashing of a wave is no longer seen as death, but as a transformation, a returning to the source. The wave understands that it was never truly separate from the ocean. Its form was temporary, but its essence, its water, is the essence of the entire ocean. It is not created from nothing, and it does not disappear into nothing. It simply changes its form. It realizes that it is, and has always been, the whole vast, deep, powerful ocean. The drama of comparing itself to other waves seems absurd. How can one part of the ocean be jealous of another? It is all one water, one existence. This is the shift in identity that all of this practice has been leading to. You thought you were the wave, living in fear. You are realizing that you are the ocean. You thought you were the fleeting thought, the passing emotion, the storm of anxiety. You are discovering that you are the silent, boundless, peaceful sky in which all of that weather takes place. Your joy is a beautiful cloud, but you are not that cloud. Your sorrow is a dark storm, but you are not that storm. Your anxiety is a thick fog, but you are not that fog. You are the open, loving awareness that allows all of these experiences to arise, to be known, and to pass away without ever being diminished or damaged by them. This means that liberation is not a future event. It is not something you achieve or earn after years of hard work. It is the simple, radical recognition of what is already true. You do not have to become the sky. You just have to stop believing you are only the cloud. You do not have to attain the state of the ocean. You just have to wake up from the dream that you are only a separate wave. Freedom is not about going somewhere else. It is about realizing the infinite space and peace that is right here in your own being, a space that has been here all along, patiently waiting to be discovered underneath the noise of the conditioned mind. And so, we have come to the culmination of our journey of understanding. We have taken the mind that felt like a prison cell and discovered that its true nature is as vast and free as the sky. We have taken the self that felt like a fragile, terrified wave and discovered that its true essence is as deep and eternal as the ocean. With this integrated understanding, with this profound shift in who we take ourselves to be, we are now ready to complete our circle. We are ready to return to where our journey began, to the dark and quiet room at 3 o'clock in the morning, but not as the same person who started this path. We return not as a prisoner of the mind, but as the silent, spacious awareness that holds the mind itself in a cradle of infinite peace. And so, we return one last time to the quiet stillness of 3 o'clock in the morning. At the beginning of our journey, this was a place of exile, a battleground where a mind at war with itself fought desperately for a peace it could not find. The room was a prison cell, and the bars were forged from our own thoughts, our own resistance. But after the long journey inward, after the courageous act of questioning everything we thought we knew about ourselves, the scene is transformed. The person lying there now is no longer fighting. They are resting. The familiar ghost of anxiety may still whisper, but it is no longer an enemy to be slain. It is seen for what it is, a cloud passing through the vast, open sky of awareness. The response is no longer to struggle, but to soften. There is a gentle returning to the breath, that simple, faithful anchor in the present moment. There is a sending of compassion, not to a distant ideal, but to the very self that lies here, awake and alive. The goal is no longer to conquer sleep. The goal is simply to be present, to rest in this open awareness, whether sleep arrives or not. The journey has been completed. We have walked the path from seeing the mind as a prison to realizing it as a sanctuary. This is the great secret we have uncovered together. Peace is not something you build, find, or achieve. It is what remains when you let go of everything that is not you. It is your fundamental nature. Think of a great block of marble. To the untrained eye, it is just a stone. But the master sculptor sees that within the stone, a beautiful statue is already waiting. The sculptor's work is not one of addition, but of subtraction. With patience and skill, they chip away the excess stone, the parts that are not the statue. And when all the unnecessary stone has been removed, the magnificent form is revealed, not as something new that was built, but as something that was always there, waiting to be uncovered. Your true nature, your inner peace, is this statue. Your anxieties, your clinging, your false stories of who you are, this is the excess stone. The practice of mindfulness is the chisel. And the startling truth of emptiness is this: it is not the hollow void we fear, but the absolute freedom of the statue, liberated from the weight of the stone. Therefore, every night, when you lay your head down to rest, you are being offered a sacred opportunity. It is a chance to practice the art of letting go. You have the chance to let go of the day that has passed. You have the chance to let go of the world and all its demands. And most profoundly, you have the chance to let go of the story of you, with all its history, its worries, and its striving. Sleep is no longer an escape from a difficult life, but a deep and loving return to your true home, to the boundless, silent space of being itself. You have the strength, you have the inner space to hold all the joys and sorrows of this precious human life. You have the key. Liberation is not in some distant future or faraway land. It is as close as your next breath, and it is waiting for you in the vast, peaceful silence of each and every night.